I'm not able to hear anyone. This is the interpreter speaking.
So I have a list
Oh, that works. All right, Ryan, you roll.
All right, Mayor Gooden. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Wellman. Here. Councilor Hershey. Yes. Councilor Cowell.
here.
Councilor
Here's
Davis.
nothing. Here.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, then, listen, the interpreter says she can't hear.
Yeah. Still working.
No, I can't, because I can.
Is she muted?
Well, she may need to. It would be the good audio that we didn't hear.
Katie, can you hear anything?
It's very, very faint.
Can you hear me now?
Is your volume down by chance?
It's super,
volume?
super faint. Let me try something. Can you try that now? Just 1 second. Ray, I'm gonna disconnect you. Okay, can we try that again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Better.
Mayor Gooden.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
Here.
Counselor Hershey.
Yes.
Counselor Cowell.
Here.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Stepp.
Here.
Counselor Wusso.
Very faint. It's hard to hear them.
We have the quorum.
All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, are there any agenda changes or conflict of interest this evening? Right, hearing none, I will take comments for citizens appearing before council. This is for items not appearing on the agenda. So if it's one of the two items on the agenda, please reserve your comments for that item. Anybody here for anything else? Okay. All right, I'll bring it back for council comments. Go ahead, Tony and Charlie. Oh, yes.
Just very briefly, this afternoon I sent some of you, and I sent it to Carl Hanlon, to the Aspen City regulation ordinance on trees. I just wanted you guys to take a look at it. Maybe we could consider adding that to a future agenda. Thank you.
And the only thing I want to add is, I think we were down at the presentation, the Rocky Mountain Air Train came in last Sunday. It was a very highly attended event. It was well received by not only the citizens, the community, but I talked to a lot of people getting off the train, and they were very excited to see the support that we gave to the train and its future in the city. So glad everybody showed up that could be there.
I'll just say that I would support Councilor Hershey's request for the ordinance for trees.
Is that something we can add to the agenda, Carl?
It is. I think you'd want to take a look. I mean, I'm sure you've looked at it in context of we have some regulations on the books already. We'll take a look at it, whether it's on a regular agenda or a work session for you guys to look at. I confess I didn't look at it yet, so.
No,
you know what I mean?
I wasn't rushing.
No, and so we'll get it on a future agenda here in the next couple of weeks, or next couple of meetings.
Two things. One, we did River Fest a few weeks ago, and it was very successful, great turnout. Just want to thank everybody in the community that wanted to come out and engage with our community and help us pick up trash and then have a nice party in the afternoon at River Park. The other thing is, this weekend is Hazardous Waste Weekend. There were appointments available on Friday for pickup and appointments for drop-off on Saturday, and I understood both of those filled up rather rapidly, so I hope that we can look at that again. And the city council maybe make it a quarterly thing so that everybody can take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think the hazmat thing really needs to be addressed like every week, so we get past over the hump. I mean, it's really important to the community. It keeps our landfill clean of hazardous waste. It keeps me from dumping paint into dumpsters downtown, but yet, and I felt like I was like first on the list to get notified, and I rushed down the next day to set up my appointment, and they said there were only 20 slots and it was full. So that really does not serve the community well, and we really need to figure out how to have more availability for that, not on a quarterly, but because now I'm thinking I could wait another year, right? But like maybe several weekends in a row or even midweek for people to have that flexibility.
No, man.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We're still working through some technology stuff.
Sumner just needs to unmute himself.
Bottom left-hand corner, Sumner.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. The audio has been weird, so I will give this a shot. I appreciate it this evening. Let me just get some notes here. Hey, good evening. I just wanted to briefly, believe it or not, take a minute to address workforce and affordable and low income and owner occupied housing. And really, I can do what I need to do in less than 3 minutes. I think we're all pretty aware that Glenwood needs any and all of these types of housing. I noted on the 2019 Northwest Council of Government Regional Housing Report, it put us way behind many others in our area. And thanks to you, we've made significant headway. We've got more relaxed ADU regulations, inclusionary housing provisions, now fee waivers, and maybe a first partnership project. You know, for the last several years, I've been on your commissions and at workshops regarding housing, and I'm definitely not speaking for a specific commission or commissioners. However, one thing I've garnered from my perspective that's key to creating successful housing and partnerships is an ongoing source of funds and revenue dedicated to housing. I don't know all the ways to secure this. It's a difficult time financially to consider additional expenditures and revenue. But if you and Glenwood do decide that we want additional workforce or affordable or low income housing, we need to explore funding and revenue options dedicated to help us attain those goals. That's what I'd like to encourage you to consider at some point. And I believe that some point may have already slipped past us in many ways. We've waited way too long. The time would be now. Waiting hasn't helped us accomplish those goals in the past. So I hope it will come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sumner. Is there anybody else from the public online that I didn't see? Doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the patience. Anybody else for council comments? Okay, I'll just give mine. First, I want to start off with, I got this beautiful letter from Rose Carlson. Yeah, I know everybody's geeking out, laughing at me, but this is like a letter for like a postcard from like the 1950s. And I just want to publicly thank Rose Carlson from Arlington Heights, Illinois, for sending this. And she just wrote on her hand-folded envelope, for the city, a gift for the city. So I'll be giving this to Mill Knight at the Historical Society, or putting on eBay. I'm not sure which one. And maybe it depends what Bill says. I think that was a great comment by Sumner. I think the time is now to really look at the tourism industry is such a blessing to this town. It gives us such great amenities, a wonderful downtown, fun things to do for our families, ourselves. But it does come with a cost, and that cost is that it's very difficult for employees, our citizens, our children to find housing in this community. So I would like to have a special session next week where we look at potential attraction tax and lodging tax. I'd like, Carl, if you could draft up potentially something that would contemplate what that lodging tax might look like, an attraction tax, with the idea of raising substantial revenue, because we can only ask so much from the development community to help solve this problem. But these impacts that the tourism economy, which is a great benefit to us, but they also have the impacts. And so does everybody have availability? Does anybody have availability next week to have this conversation? And then I'll have another comment about another issue as well for that session. But I was wondering if I'm gone Thursday and Friday.
I'm gone all days, but could possibly do an evening session.
Evening session. What about the evening of the 25th?
Mr. Mayor, how much time would you proceed with this?
Probably an hour.
Yeah, I would think we could get it done in an hour. It's kind of tough for me. Wednesday night, I definitely can't do because I'm going to be on the road. If you guys are okay on Tuesday night, there will be a planning commission meeting in this room, but we could hold that work session like upstairs in the conference room upstairs, if Tuesday night worked for you guys.
Tuesday's my only availability.
Tuesday does work?
Is my only availability.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So what time do you think you'd be able to start?
Arts and Culture Board that night, but I suppose I could.
Yeah, no, but I was trying to figure out if we could do like a 5 p.m. start instead of a 6.
I would need to be later.
I'm in Aspen until 5.
Okay, so you'd need 6 o'clock. Okay.
The 24th?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the Tuesday.
Ingrid?
I never go anywhere and I'm always available.
You sound kind of like me.
I might have to take it.
All right.
Start time 6.
6 o'clock PM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I budget an hour and a half, but I think we can get it done in an hour, just looking at a couple of questions and talking about language. And I'll have something put together.
And if folks have ideas,
I have an idea. No news facts.
okay. Also, speaking of that special session and items go on the ballot, I don't know exactly where it's at, but I know there was a citizens group that had put forth a citizens initiative to put a referendum on this fall's ballot. I believe they're in the process of potentially carrying signatures. I would like for us also as a council to contemplate that. And so I'd like to direct, if the rest of council was so inclined, to direct our legal counsel to talk to a representative from their group about various languages so that we could maybe come together and have an idea of something that we could also talk about that evening to go on the fall ballot. That would be.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think 2 things. One is, as you know, last week I sent out, had copied you guys that the clerk had found the petition to be insufficient. We met a couple of times. Ryan and I met on Monday, and then I had a telephone call on Tuesday with the citizens group. And one of the options that they asked is if council would be interested in potentially working on a joint question cooperatively. You know, I always think it's a good idea to talk. So I'd like your consent to do that. The other issue that has come up that I know at least Jonathan has mentioned is whether or not we really need to take a hard look at finding a permanent funding source for the airport, recognizing that there are large and significant capital needs out there. I'd like to suggest that I go ahead and draft some language around both the mill levy and bond and a debt question, recognizing that, you know, to keep that amenity, it's going to require some improvements in SHIP. So those 2 things we could add to that evening's work, if that works for you guys. I'm not anticipating we would have a final decision on those questions. We have to have our ballot language into the clerk by September 3rd, so we can take action on it on September 2nd. But I do need that special session to make sure that you guys have kicked around some language and thought about costs and all those kinds of things that go into all of those various pieces. So if that works for everybody, I'll prep that as well.
Do you feel confident that you'll be able to have that meeting by Tuesday evening with the Citizens Alliance?
Yeah. Okay. Then somebody in the room. Yeah. There. Hi. So I think we can have those meetings. We'll at least have some tentative language, or if we can't, you know, find common ground, you'll know that as well. So.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if we're going to do that, then I would ask that we have a brief executive session. At the beginning, I have some legal questions that I want to ask Carl, and, you know, on the attorney-client level, so.
That might be tough with Shelley not being able to get here till 6, so then if.
I think you meant starting at 6.
Yeah.
We
Oh.
start the special meeting at 6. Brief executive session. Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Last comment is our beloved city manager is feeling under the weather today. Deborah, get better. All right. Next item on the agenda.
Is the, consent.
Consent agenda. Yes, is there a motion?
I move.
Second.
Been moved by Charlie, second by Tony. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Can I pause for just a second and say, I think that Matt Armentrout is here, and he's one of our new Parks and Rec commissioners. Matt, are you here still?
The talking stick.
Talking stick.
Okay. What's that?
You can just say that out.
Yeah, totally. If Matt Armentrout is here still, he is one of our new Parks and Rec commissioners, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for your willingness to serve and for showing up this evening. There he is. He's coming. He's coming from the other room. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. It's a great committee.
It is a great committee.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a proclamation thanking the Colorado Department of Transportation.
Vote on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's usually my role, Carl, is to ask questions that everybody has. All right. Is there anybody, a representative here from CDOT? No? Okay. Well, I'm not going to stand up in front then. I will just read it from here, my seat. But this is a proclamation of thank you for CDOT and all the work they've done in the canyon this last several weeks. Whereas CDOT, founded in 1910, is a department of the Colorado state government that is responsible for safe and efficient transportation across the state. And whereas the Glenwood Springs is a part of the Intermountain Transportation Region with a regional transportation plan that has a goal of completing 267 projects with an estimated cost of $3.5 billion by 2045. And whereas on August 10th, 2020, the Grizzly Creek Fire started in Glenwood Canyon. And whereas the Grizzly Creek Fire burned over 32,631 acres in Glenwood Canyon and increased the risk of substantial and recurring debris flow onto I-70. And whereas through the winter, fall, spring, CDOT worked hand in hand with the Colorado State Patrol, Garfield and Eagle Counties, Glenwood Springs Fire Department, and the city of Glenwood Springs to come up with a closure plan for I-70 to ensure that the city residents were not trapped in the event of debris flow. And whereas on June 26, 2021, the first major debris flow occurred onto I-70. There have since been about a dozen slide events requiring interstate closures and CDOT resources to execute that plan. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Jonathan Godis, Mayor of Glenwood Springs in the state of Colorado, ask all of our city residents to join me in humbly thanking CDOT's dedicated employees for their tireless work every day, and especially during this summer's mudslides. Thank you, CDOT. Right. Next item. What is the next item? Oh, right. Continuation of annexation. Funny guy, right? All right. I believe we left this with a continuation of public comment. We're going to continue that public comment. I believe we have a interpreter for a citizen. So help walk me through this a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you have an interpreter on the screen right now, which is kind of taking care of that. What I will say is that, just to orient us, we were in the kind of wrapping up public comment at the end of the last meeting, that you left it open to finish public comment tonight. At the conclusion of that public comment, then it's your turn to ask questions of the applicant and staff. And I think we're all prepared to answer those questions for you. And then from there, it's kind of up to you whether you finish tonight, whether you continue, you know, how you're feeling, what motion you make, all that kind of stuff we can talk about at that point. Just a reminder that when we ended public comment at the last meeting, only new public comment is being taken. So if you spoke at the meeting the last time, your comments are in the record. And so this is for people who did not speak at the prior meeting. And I think Jen is helping us out, making sure just, you know, sometimes it's easy to forget whether you were there at the meeting or not, honestly. It's been 3 weeks ago. So she's helping us out with that. There is a sign-up sheet that hopefully Hannah passed around, and I know the last time it worked pretty well to have Jen call the next person on the list for you, Jonathan. And the last thing is we kind of went back and forth, roughly 10 people from the audience live and 10 people or so online, if there were any online. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Can we do one reminder to students or just like for the comments that I'm here?
I guess what I would ask is, like, no clapping, no yelling. Please, you know, just be courteous to all of us. And I will say the same thing I said the last time, we're trying with the technology, so if we get it wrong a little bit, it's not intentional, we're just trying to get there. Is that sufficient?
On that note, Egress, I would just ask, there are people here, and Glenwood is such a nice town, and we have guests here, and they happen to be the applicant. And I heard some language last time that really made me upset to be a citizen of Glenwood Springs, calling them names and stuff. We welcome everyone, and if you have a difference of opinion, that's okay. Nothing has to be personal against us or against the applicant or against your fellow citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, with that, I think we're going to take a comment first from Ms. Bobby Merriweather.
Mr. Mayor, do we have an ability, people that are virtual to sign up?
Yeah, they're gonna be keeping track, so they'll be able to raise their hand like they always do, and we're keeping track of that, just like we did last time.
Right, I just want to make sure they know if they want to speak when they're virtual, they can raise their hand.
Yes.
So that's said in this meeting too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can we begin now with Ms.
Yeah, I think that's, please, go ahead.
I'll be very lovely.
I will read Bobby Merriweather's statement. She is a resident of Glenwood Springs. In West Glenwood, the blight is the lack of public accessible and biologically diverse space for residents to gather under shade, to walk their dogs, to breathe. There is no buffer from the path of onrushing fires. We need a park here, not 3 miles away across the river. No need to clog the exits more. We see, taste, breathe, and smell the traffic fumes, the smoke and the dust of drought and expanded mining. There is an R2 district school that has nothing but hot cement for the kids to play on, no parking for that school on Center Drive. The only park near is Gregory Park, half the size of an average running track. There will be children born to those residing here. What about their future? A short walk west of the pasture along Donegan Road are the narrow and steep grades of the Mitchell Creek drainage. This is where the rural road interfaces with the rural mountain west, an environmentally sensitive area. The future will demand a significant level of water infrastructure upgrade in order to meet new water quality public standards by 2027. Colorado population has doubled since 2000 and will exponentially double again in 10 years. We cannot comprehend adding thousands of more car trips to this area. R2 cannot begin to explain the hard work.
No, he's sorry.
No, you're fine.
All right, sorry, Vice President, sorry. Go ahead, I apologize.
The innovation and community means to the very people who have built its values of a lifetime. They have invested in the properties and businesses too. They make vital contributions to the city's institutions and markets and businesses. True blight would be to invite more utopian fantasy dreams onto the rural region. This is not the history, not the character of the Mountain West. We appreciate West Glenwood diversity. Eagles would be displaced with such invasive encroachment. Steve Beckley, appointed to the River Conservation Board, said, I think there is such a need for the future of West Glenwood to take our water issues more seriously. I think there are more things that are going to happen over the next 20 years with water usage that is very important to weed through the issues. The Water Department recently had a close call when the infrastructure upgrade was barely in place before the last devastating mudslide event earlier this year that shut down the canyon for days. About Mike Hinckley's claims that the newly installed Water Department upgrade performed beautifully. It was installed just in time. We doubt the city is beautifully prepared. Balance the scales in favor of Glenwood's true character, aesthetics, and values. Your neighbors, your working people are Glenwood's true assets. These are the quality of life intangibles that dollars alone cannot weigh. Respect where we live. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bobby, and thank you for reading that statement. All right, next person?
Susan Schmidt.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Susan Schmitz, and I'm a resident of West Glenwood Springs. I appreciate your willingness to listen to the input of the immediate community that will be greatly affected by the annexation and development of 480 Donegan Road and R2 partners. As it has been stated by many opposed to the proposed annexation and development, the proposed development would greatly impact the safety of the community as a whole. As we currently stand, the evacuation of the area in the event of a wildfire is grossly ineffective. People have commented on their real-life experiences that they have been trapped in their vehicles with children and pets and health issues more than 4 to 5 hours, progressing only a mile, if that. And adding an additional 500 to 1,000 vehicles to a dire situation is deadly. On another note, it has been said by our two partnership that they are looking to build quote-unquote community in the area with the proposed development. It is offensive to the current residents who live in the community and participate in the daily living of their neighbors. We watch out for one another. We lend a helping hand daily. We watch out for one another when someone is in need by offering grocery shopping, watching and taking care of one another's pets, alerting one another if there's suspicious behavior, activity within the neighborhood, etc. We share the fruits of our trees and the skills and/or our skills when necessary if need arises. Yes, there is no doubt that the infrastructure of our neighborhood is in need. However, please do not doubt that we lack community amongst ourselves. As it has already been noted, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor for Colorado, 100% of Garfield County is currently in extreme drought on the intensity scale. How do we sustain such a densely populated proposed development of West Glenwood pasture development? The current residents of West Glenwood at one point or multiple times have been on water restrictions both indoor and outdoor over the past 3 months. And the immediate outlook is the immediate outlook that much different than what we are currently experiencing? Many of us think not. Lastly, in the city of Glenwood Springs alone, several apartment housing development projects have been completed and/or in progress to address the shortage of housing. Please note, I did not say quote-unquote affordable housing. Is it not time to address the current capacity of apartment living that has been recently developed to determine if the recent developments are truly effective and supported by the so-called intended parties? It is my understanding that these existing new developments are not 100% occupied, and it could be that they may be too expensive for the average wage earner in Glenwood Springs and the surrounding areas to reasonably afford. City Council members, the residents of West Glenwood Springs, thank you for your consideration of the proposed development and pray you make the choice that truly serves the current and future residents of our community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next.
Joan McGannick.
Hi, my name is Joan McGavick, and I live on Melray in West Glenwood in the county. I want to thank you for your time with this issue. It's really important for us who live there to have a voice. So I have heard from many passionate people about the biggest issue of the project, and that is getting out in time of a fire, which I experienced many years ago. But there are a few things that the company talked about that I want to address. They're trying to sell you something. And if I was there listening to them, I mean, I was listening to their proposal. And if I didn't live there and experience what I do in West Glenwood, I would probably be convinced that this is a great thing. But they said they want to build gutters, sidewalks, bike lanes, and improve the road along Donegan. Well, I walk my dog there every day, and we don't really need a bike lane. There's not that much traffic. So you have this problem that they're creating, and they have this great solution for it, but it's not a problem right now. Sidewalks would be great. An improvement along Melray would be great, because that road from Donegan south on Melray is in need of help. So noise was another thing that was brought up. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the builder said there is no problem with noise. I live at the top of Melray, and in the last 5 years, the noise level has increased incredibly, and mainly from I-70, but also from, you know, I can hear dogs barking, people's cars, you know, that get turned on. It's just the people that will be living right next to it, there will be significant noise. I know we need more housing, and you build it, they will come, but we need affordable housing, and that's an issue I know you're going to talk about later, but it has to be for people that are able to afford it, not all these people coming in from outside. So I just want you to really think about all of the issues. And for those of us who live there, we love our community. And I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Who's next?
It looks like Bree McKellum is on Zoom.
Go ahead, Bree.
Oh, she disappeared?
Next.
Oh, it looks like she put her hand down.
Okay.
She's getting pulled over.
Okay, you've just allowed me to speak. Can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, my name is Brianna McCallum. I'm a resident at 3173 County Road 134, Glenwood Springs, Colorado. I also own commercial property and a condo in Glenwood Springs. I'm here to talk about, even though I'm not a West Glenwood resident, I have major concerns on the density of this project. The proposed is saying that there'd be 600 people. I don't know how 600 people only 600 can be in this amount, what they're proposing, but that would be 6% of our current Glenwood Springs population and 0.35% of the acres of the city limits. And that's a lot. To me, that's taking away from the small town character and going more into like a city kind of character, which I don't think that aligns with our current comprehensive plan or any kind of comprehensive plan that you guys are probably going to come up with in 2022. So I'm really concerned that's taking away the small town character. Additionally, I know most of you guys probably do not have young kids, though you all have aged very well. I have a young daughter, and I got pregnant back in January 2020, and I put on the list in March 2020, and I am still on the waiting list for childcare. So what concerns me is you bring in 600 people with other babies, and there's only 3 spots for infant care in Glenwood Springs. That means that it's just going to get more competitive for people that actually live and work in Glenwood Springs to have available resources to these human resources that we need, like childcare. And I think it's just going to make it worse. So there's a lot of, besides just infrastructure, that I think the city of Glenwood Springs needs to work on, along with childcare. And this is just going to make this problem worse. And lastly, the only other thing I want to address is that, I mean, seeing the current cost of how much this is going to be, I think this is just going to make the problem of people coming in excited, got a good job, a good wage, and then living here for a couple of years, realizing, oh my gosh, 50% of my rent is going to a 1-bedroom when I want to have a family and I can't afford these other things. And I think this is just going to exacerbate the problem, where you're just going to have people with seasonal workers, not real people that want to have a family. And I don't think this development fits this. So I hope today I'm just kind of here to urge you guys to deny both of the motions for the annex along with the rezoning, because I don't think it fits our small character. I don't think it promotes family friendliness, and I don't think it promotes young families that want to come here. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Just point of order, I do believe we took a vote as a council when we were talking about online comments, and we did ask, and
Well, it's, because we can't show the timer in the picture at the same. It's the way they come over, they can, sorry, let me back up. We need to do it the way we are to allow us to maintain control and not get Zoom bombed.
I see.
So you're right, you did take a vote. No, we couldn't execute on it.
Okay, so
it's voice only.
So we probably need to, I mean, not to be a stickler, but we probably need to revisit that because, I mean, is this how it's going to always be?
Potentially, yes. So we kind of did revisit it a little bit at the last meeting when you weren't here and just kind of acknowledged that we couldn't do it, at least right now.
Okay. Next.
David Medagavic. I apologize for missing you.
Hello, David McGavick. I live on Melray Road in the county. Thank you for hosting these hearings and for taking the time to listen to us. I hope you seriously consider what you hear and craft a plan that respects the character of the existing Glenwood community. Your P&Z board did an excellent job of listening and noting ideas and concerns. It's significant that after careful consideration, the board chose to reject the proposal. They showed concern for factors of overall safety, lack of revised comprehensive plan, and future pedestrian safety. The extreme density proposal is at the root of all these issues and should be amended or rejected. All of us who've lived in Glenwood Springs for West Glenwood for the past 25 years have stories related to the fire. Lack of routes or even a plan for evacuation leave us like sitting ducks. 20 years of additional development on the north side of the Colorado River, attendant population growth, and repeated experience with gridlock haven't relieved our concerns for a repeat of 2002, sitting in traffic for hours and watching the fire spread around us, literally. The density of the development not only threatens our safety for evacuation, but will impact the quality of life in our community. R2 is proposing solutions to problems that are non-existent at current density. The need for bike lane only arises from the density of the traffic that will result from 250 units or so. With the development will come noise and light pollution. What will be done to mitigate these effects? Melray Road, on the other hand, is a hazardous street. It is a major thoroughfare for cars, semi-trailer trucks, bicycles, pedestrians, and many of them are children. There are approximately 12 businesses that empty onto Melray. I support the idea of improving the street and installing a sidewalk, but simple architectural drawings don't begin to describe the complexity of Melray with its multiple parking lots, fire station, storage for wrecked semi-trucks, and bread depot. Cars and trucks are constantly stopping, parking, and backing up. A needed sidewalk is needed, but will be inadequate to rise above all these hazards. As it empties into the roundabout, Melray gets even more complicated. The current configuration of the roundabout requires that all vehicles in the outside lane of traffic stop, sometimes abruptly, when a pedestrian or bicycle crosses. Add to this, the roundabout will be the pinch point for all but one of the roads leading out of the development. We would love to have the benefit of shopping and walking in walking distance. The development of the mall to include a grocery store and sundry things would be great. Making this a walkable neighborhood will not happen overnight. The development of homes needs to grow with the development of these businesses. Otherwise, the additional 600 to 1,000 residents will join us to traverse across Glenwood, and this will not lead itself to small town character. Thank you. I did it.
Great timing. Jen, who's next?
Tracy Trullo.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Tracy Trulove, and I live on Ptarmigan Drive in West Glenwood. I'm not here tonight in the capacity of working with CDOT. I appreciate the proclamation. I'll be happy to take it to them tomorrow, though. In August of 2018, I was in a meeting at CDOT headquarters in Denver when we were alerted of a fire at the 113. My fellow public information officer, Jenny Cutright, had called me directly because I was in Denver and my kids were in Glenwood. At that time, I went ahead and called my kids that morning and said, get the cat and go to your grandma's house who lives in 4 Mile. The reason I did that is because I knew what was going to occur pretty soon thereafter, which was West Glenwood would become a parking lot. When I called the kids, they were confused why I was asking them to get out when I did. And then later on, I was really happy I made that decision. We were fortunate that particular fire didn't go anywhere, but it has continued to be the case where we're concerned about evacuations in this area of town, not to mention all of town. I noticed recently, Mayor Godes, in fact, that you spoke to CNN on a video where you mentioned that we don't want you to come here. How are we going to provide water for these people? I know how media works. I know they could have taken your interview and cut it into very interesting pieces. But I think what's good for the goose and the gander on the south side of Glenwood should also be considered for West Glenwood. It's a real concern. It's a concern for Glenwood proper. I know last year when the Grizzly Creek fire broke out, based on the kind of work that I do, that we were talking about how we would evacuate the entire area. It was only a year ago. So how is it that we can't be considering adding a lot of new souls to the West Glenwood when we know this is an issue. Without an updated comprehensive plan, it seems premature to make a decision on annexation. I have a question more than a comment. What kind of traffic operations analysis has been done on the West Glenwood roundabouts associated with this development? It feels like there should be a lot more public process around making any kind of decisions on future development for West Glenwood or really Glenwood at all. I've mentioned several times to Garfield County and members of staff about something called the Traffic Incident Management Plan. This is state actually would fund. What it requires, though, is the multi-jurisdictional cooperation to have something like that put together. As I'm aware, based on speaking to former colleagues of mine, that still hasn't been something that's been done. It feels like there's a great amount of due diligence that still needs to be done here before any future development decisions should be made. I appreciate your time tonight. I appreciate you taking this very seriously, and I hope that you will make decisions as stewards of this city that impact all of the souls that are here before we add a bunch of new souls to the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Hi, Richardson is on. Did you say hi? I think so.
Unmute yourself bottom left if you can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Ty Richardson, 4135 County Road 134, Glenwood Springs. I'm not a Glenwood resident nor a West Glenwood resident, but I did attend one of the concerned citizens meeting here a little while ago. And the common denominator is they are really pretty unhappy with this project. And of course, with another 1,700 signatures on a petition against the project, that's pretty apparent as well. But with that being said, I just don't know what is in it for the West Glenwood residents. And I do really, really do feel sorry for them. I mean, honestly, this is a $125 million project. It's large, it's extremely lucrative, and the push to bring this project to fruition is extremely intense. I know that. But concerns of the West Glenwood citizens are real. Putting another 400 to 800 residents in this area is just not responsible, especially from a fire evacuation standpoint. If it's the intent of city government to greenlight a project of this magnitude, then they should assure the safety of all West Glenwood residents. No questions asked. Just to put this in perspective, we were in the fire in South Canyon in 2002. There were only 3 people up there, and one of them almost died. The city is currently fighting a quarry expansion next to the city. I believe the opinion of the residents has spoken clearly on that quarry matter. And now the citizens have spoken pretty loudly about this project as well. Let's refuse both of these projects of this enormous size and magnitude from defining our future. Please represent the will of the West Glenwood residents. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Walt Crum?
My name is Walt Crum. I own a home in Cedar Crest area of West Glenwood Springs. I'm a city resident. I oppose the annexation of the property in question. First, I would like to quote the Garfield County Commissioners in their report to the city on July 19th. They said, the density and building heights of the proposed project are incompatible with and will have a significant impact on the existing residential neighborhoods, end quote. Second, the increased traffic caused by the occupants of these 300 or so apartments and townhomes cannot be safely handled by surrounding streets. Annexing this area and its streets will bring additional maintenance burdens to a city function that is already overburdened and underfunded. Third, I strongly feel the improved emergency evacuation routes must be created, not just planned, before any additional residential development is approved. And finally, I urge the council to pause any further expansion and development of our city until the 10-year-old comp plan is revised. Thank you.
Kevin Ward?
Kevin. Next.
Might be in the other room.
Oh,
He's coming up.
okay.
What more?
Just want to say while he's coming up, thank you everybody for not cheering and being very dignified. It's great.
You missed it.
I did miss that. I heard it though. Hello. Hey, Kevin.
My name is Kevin Ward. I'm a West Glenwood County resident. I've raised a family, own a house, and a successful towing and recovery business on Melray Road. Our large side of our business is semis, tractor trailers, semi-tow trucks. I use Melray, Donegan, and Storm King every day with these trucks. It is a known truck route to get around and out, and to mention our way around and out from our business. I provide 24-hour, 7 days a week service for trucks, semi-truck, trailers. These trucks will plug up a road in a heartbeat when they break down or have an accident. I'm the only one in the area with a tow truck of that size to handle these terrible accidents that happen in the valley. I've also had to respond with first responders on certain situations with these terrible accidents that we have. When a sidewalk is represented, your sidewalk proposal on the west side of Melray will impact us big time with the trucks. I got trucks coming and going out of the yard. A sidewalk brings in kids, people walking their dogs, bikes. I'm dragging in these horrified wrecks. They're coming and going. I got trucks leaving the yard. That sidewalk on the west side of Melray is very close to my trucks, which would be right next to where I park a truck. I've been here a long time, 30, 40 years, probably 35. I don't know, but there's not enough room for a sidewalk on Melray. The road's too narrow. You're going to have to start taking people's property. There's 100-year-old trees, people's landscaping. I'm totally against this entire project. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Crystal Ward?
Thank you. Crystal Ward?
You might be in the other room too.
Yes, yes. We need like a 10-square page.
Yeah.
We do. Hannah was having that function, she's helping guide everybody over.
Are you Krista? Oh, okay, over there.
Trying to figure it out.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Krista Ward. I am a West Glenwood County resident. My family and I live on Melray, just east of the development. Not only would this 480 Donegan project affect my parents' property, my home, it would also affect my family business down the street on Melray. I oppose this project for many reasons. Safety is our biggest concern. Mass population brings more problems, whether it's infrastructure failure, lack of personnel, to lack of resources available. As new people move in, new people forget what's here and why it is the way it is. One concern I have is the lack of law enforcement Glenwood Springs currently has. Glenwood Police Department has 34 authorized positions available. According to the most recent update of information I could find was dated March 2021, stating Glenwood Springs has only 22 officers, understaffed by 12. That article was only 5 months ago. We recently heard that we're lucky to have 2 officers on duty for Saturday night. Makes me feel the police department is understaffed for the population we currently have. I am concerned for my safety. I'm concerned for my family's safety, my neighbor's safety, and the community's safety. Another concern I have is the proposed sidewalk for Melray. It would take away from our business parking to our customers and employees. A regular pickup would not even be able to park in front of our business if a sidewalk would come in. Another daring concern for us is with the sidewalk is we service the community with a large tow truck. We have to be able to get into and out of our yard. There are times our large wrecker is still hooked up to a tractor trailer, and that's roughly 125 feet in length. With that known, we have to be able to access our business lot as well as the designated truck outlet from Melray, Donegan, Storm King, and Highway 6. We need the room to maneuver, and adding a sidewalk with pedestrians to our side road is not feasible. Safety is our concern, as well as being able to conduct business and keep your roads open and safe when the disaster happens. We asked for the sidewalk to be built on the 480 Donegan project property. It would allow them a straight shot for the sidewalk from Donegan to the Glenwood Springs Mall to Highway 6 where the bus stop is. It would be way safer for the community, and it would not destroy everyone's property on Melray. Now, another safety concern we have is the parking lot plan behind the development. We ask and request a bigger retaining wall to be built. The general public driving skills are not skilled. With the towing and recovery business we have seen everything imaginable to accidents. A 4-inch lip will not keep vehicles from plowing through our fence to my family or neighbor's house. We need a 6-foot retaining wall built out of concrete to keep us safe. So my proposed idea to R2 development is to build a 6-foot retaining wall on the east side of the property for Mallory residents, adding their landscape and the sidewalk before the parking lot. We do not need to lose land and more value to our properties just to accommodate a large project. My family has built a life in West Glenwood for 40 years, raised a family, successfully operating a business that the city, county, and state needs. My family has worked hard to be where we are today, and it's always been a place we cherish because it's home. Please take consideration in West Glenwood and imagine if you were in our shoes. Safety is our biggest concern.
Hey, Krista.
Thank you.
Cindy Rinian? Ryman.
My name is Cindy Ryman, and I'm a 60-plus year resident of Glenwood Springs. However, I don't live in Glenwood now. I live in South Glenwood. I have bought property on Gambit Drive and plan to move in a couple of weeks. I'm here to oppose the annexation and rezoning of the property for all the same reasons everybody's listing here. Most of my friends are against it, and I feel most of Glenwood is against it. Traffic will always be an issue. The traffic study that was done, I don't think included the mall traffic that everybody is anticipating. There must be an evacuation plan implemented before any further development happens. The city spent thousands of dollars on a study on the South Glenwood Bridge, on the implication of no bridge versus a bridge and how many people would die, how many structures would be destroyed. I don't even think we need to do a study on this project. There are going to be casualties if there's another fire. I feel that the council and Glenwood needs to look at what we see for the future of Glenwood in 5 and 10 years. Will we have a much needed senior center, an art center, a theater? We're already lacking open space and parks, especially in North and West Glenwood. The current development of the basketball courts at Sayre Park is great, but where would you put any of them in West Glenwood? There's no place. Glenwood is having a difficult time maintaining its utilities and infrastructure now. It should not tackle more. Commercial businesses are not coming to Glenwood or anywhere else just because of increased residents. Look at the empty buildings we have downtown and the big empty stores along Grand Avenue and South Glenwood. Too many people are shopping online, and commercial is not going to be our salvation for increasing our tax base. Since the majority of people oppose this development, why should this be approved by the council? The P&Z has voted to deny it, and the Garfield County staff recommended non-approval. I urge you not to annex this property and to vote no for the rezoning of this property. Thank you.
Adolfo Gora?
Hi, Adolfo Gora, resident of Glenwood Springs for 23 years. And I'm a structural engineer. I don't have any connection to the project. But I wanted to tell you that I've served on Garfield County P&Z during the time that the comp plan was developed, along with the City of Glenwood Springs comp plan. And that is a tremendous effort putting together those comp plans, and it is absolutely the best way to manage the growth of our communities. It's a very proactive way to do it. A lot of people involved, a lot of agencies, a lot of citizens willing to put the time into managing our growth. And it's just a tremendous tool, which created or was done with a great deal of effort. In looking things over and reading over the application, I recognize that really very few people actually want growth, but I have to respect the assessment of our City of Glenwood Springs planning staff and their recommendations that they came up with the conditions. A great deal of work that they put into it, and I think that they have reached the right conclusion. In my opinion, the project is going to be a very good way to manage the growth, in keeping with a comprehensive plan as it was formed. Growth is going to happen. The comprehensive plan, in keeping with a comprehensive plan, is a way to make sure that it is done in an orderly manner, in a way that most benefits us. I have known the Demos family for many years, and I can assure you that you'll be hard pressed to find a group of people that has the Glenwood Springs, the benefit of Glenwood Springs more in their heart than the Demos family. And I urge you to approve the annexation and the zoning application as submitted. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Adolfo.
John Banks.
Hi, my name is John Banks. I live at 1015 Park West Drive in Glenwood Springs. I realize that apartments are the most profitable thing to develop right now, apparently. But I am concerned that the housing stock in Glenwood Springs is beginning to tilt very heavily in favor of apartments. Many people feel that these apartments are perhaps the solution to the affordable housing problem that people are concerned about. But I think that if apartments were solving the affordable housing problem, if they were the solution, we'd start to see some results by now. We built a lot of them, and we're not. We may be on our way to solving the affordable housing problem differently, though. If you go to your favorite fishing hole and you stand there fishing shoulder to shoulder with 10 of your buddies, if the traffic on Grand Avenue is bumper to bumper every day from Walmart to the bridge, if the line to get into the hot springs pool is 40 minutes, if your kids can't play on the lawn because you don't have a lawn anymore, you have to pull it out because, you know, we've had water restrictions for 6 of the last 10 years, and they're getting worse. Well, if we're dealing with all of those things, housing may start to become more affordable because the quality of life is going to diminish, and that'll reduce the demand. And that's probably what it's going to take to, you know, to put an impact on affordable housing. I think we've got to look real hard at the quality of life benefit that this project brings to the citizens of Glenwood Springs. And it's not clear that there is a quality of life benefit to the citizens of Glenwood Springs. There is a concept of enough. I think we're starting to reach the point where we have to think very seriously about what is enough. I suspect that we're underestimating the infrastructure costs that the city's going to take on when they do this annexation. This is a lot of concerns. I'll also note that since this is an annexation, there is nothing owed by the city to the developer or to the owner. They're free to pursue their goals in the county, and maybe that's the best thing here. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
Jamie Darius.
Next door.
And you're over there. Hello.
I'm really nervous.
Can I take off my shoes? Would you mind? I don't know why, but it makes me feel better. Well, hi, I'm Jamie Darian, and I'm a proud West Glenwood resident. I live on 19 Chaparral Circle. If the project goes through, I will be your greeter coming in. Whew. I saw the 2020-2025 Strategic Vision Plan on the council's website and was pleased to see many of their goals being addressed. The improvements were needed in water supply and system planning, improvement to the 6 and 24 bike path, affordable housing and affordable housing incentives, a plan for a future West Glenwood firehouse, and the hiring of a deputy fire chief. A reminder of what we really need and not just want in Glenwood Springs. So in taking these goals into account, I stand before you shaking and ask for an additional 3 goals to add to your vision. Number 1, an update to the present comprehensive plan constructed and implemented in 2011. In the past 10 years, we've seen a mass increase in population, noise, housing, cyclists, pedestrians, and especially traffic. In the old plan, much was referred to keeping small town character. Well, perhaps we should now focus more on what kind of character is Glenwood going to show. By moving forward with an updated comprehensive plan, we can address what should be the perimeters, boundaries, density, and story limitations of businesses, private properties, and rental developments alike. Number 2, we owe it to our fire department to give them the necessary tools, structure, and housing required to keep all residents safe. A new firehouse should be built on trust and gratitude by the citizens of Glenwood and not as a consolation by out-of-state developers. The majority of letters to the editor, city staff included, all had the same common denominator, fear. Fear of fire, of no place to go or run to. We really need an evacuation plan, a formal evacuation plan established by professionals and neighbors and those who know best how to handle emergency evacuations. So I'm asking you to suspend any decisions regarding annexation, or the other one, of West Glenwood into city limits until we have a stronger foundation of what is needed and we can provide a yes to each of these questions. Does it adequately address safety and well-being of others? Does it benefit neighbors, residents, and visitors, tourists to our town? Does it enhance our quality of life in Glenwood Springs and not just the developers? So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Vanian?
I believe Susan Fenton speaks. Mr. Mayor.
I was not there.
I don't.
It's not on the official list.
Thought I remember.
Jennifer Mickelson.
Oh, maybe. But I know Jennifer Fenton. I don't think I don't remember her speaking. Okay. Must have been a dream I had.
She would have spoken on another matter.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
I'd say my love.
On a matter before. Some channel.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Vanian. I live at 1016 Minter. I love my community. I love my friends in it. And I want to thank you guys for being council members. It's a pretty hard job, I can tell. So thank you a lot. I'm seeing that I want to see our city respond more to climate change. A current example of that is that we let a developer put a 30 by 100 strip of asphalt in the center of the park, Strawberry Park, which used to be a shady place. And I'd like us to start thinking about how to cool things down and not contribute to the heat of the city. So the design of street fronts on the West Glenwood project shows how climate change is forgotten in that project. The windows of the buildings are from the top to the bottom of the walls. And obviously, whoever designed it probably lives in a place that has cloud cover and lots of shade, but it's kind of absurd for Colorado. The most important thing I'm seeing here within the city's conversation of where they want to be in 10 years is the lack of consideration for climate change. We've passed the time to change on a large scale, and if we don't change in cities and accommodate in planning, people will be in chaos in the near future. Very real aspect of temperatures climbing into the 3 digits as they did in Oregon and all over the world this summer is a real threat. Paonia is already supplying bottled water to its residents when the city water ran out last summer, and they're planning for that this year. If a person gained 100 pounds in a year, the consequences of that would be overwhelming and very hard to turn around. Our city is approaching growth exactly like that, without waiting to see what the effects of adding thousands of people to the population and adding more before approved developments are even started. The thing is, if the city is doing this for the money, talking about West Glenwood now, the $4 million and the 70,000 and the 1 acre of land is a slight gift. From my calculations, and these aren't great, but the developer will make at least $600,000 a month in rent per generation. The city's $4 million, I don't know, won't last that long. Some of the final things I have to say is I have a friend who lives out in the meadows, and every time I see her, there are children on the sidewalks and they're pounding rocks, breaking rocks. So there's asphalt in the back where there's parking, there's rocks and sidewalks, and then more asphalt in the front, so that's all there is to do. A 1 acre park was approved out there on March 5th, 2012, right after stage 1. We're on stage 3 now. Plus I saw a notice for the next 300. So they're moving on to stage 4 and we have no park.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It goes quick.
Carl Stark.
I'm going to decline time.
Randy Henry.
He's coming.
Highway Director, Chief of Canada, first time.
I do? Well, thank you.
Get that lady, please take a look.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Henry. I live at 820 Palmer Avenue in Glenwood Springs. That would be east, the original town site, downtown. I moved here in '79. I've lived in the same 3-block area since then. I moved here when I was a new graduate and started working here at I think I was making $5.70 an hour, something like that. I was able to buy my house in 1987. I had to think long and hard about it because my rent was $175 a month and my house payment would have been $400. And I had to figure out if I could make that. I feel privileged to live where I live. I feel like I live in paradise. This is a wonderful place. I don't ever want to leave here, but some of the stuff that's happening makes me really question, my choices in that. And I guess, so many good things have been said that I had also thought of, but what I want to emphasize is the character of this town. It's been said or written that you want Glenwood to be walkable, talkable, active and engaging in citizenry, which this is a great example, and essential services and amenities in walking distance. I have all that where I live. I can walk to the grocery store, I can walk to the bank, to the pool, hiking. I can even walk to the hospital. It's a lot cheaper than getting an ambulance. And as one man pointed out, I would like to know, what is enough? And what can the infrastructure support? And I think that there are plenty of things to do with the town to make things right now without adding this on top of it. The current infrastructure is failing. And, I know a number of people who live out in West Glenwood. The biggest concern that I have is the traffic. Trying to get through that roundabout on a good day is a challenge. And before the fire started in the canyon, there was one west. You couldn't go west out of Glenwood. Then you couldn't go east out of Glenwood. Then you can't get over Marble because of slides there. Then you can't get through Aspen because California, New York, and Texas are clogging the roads. So, you know, what is enough? And what is small town character? And finally, what is affordable housing? I went by at least 3 places that have signs in their window that need people to work. And I can guarantee you, they'll be lucky if they're making $15 an hour. And I want to know what anybody can afford here making $15 an hour. I do not dispute the fact that we need more housing, that we need more availability, because up behind me, there are all VRBOs or rentals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Barton?
Hello, my name's Dave. I live in the Meadows. My daughter and grandchildren live there as well. It's nice to see that my generation, the baby boomers are so well represented tonight. I'm not here to talk about our generation. I'm to talk about our legacy. My daughter is paying $2,800 a month in rent, up $800 from 2 years ago. She has 2 businesses. She's a sole proprietor, a salon keeper, and a dog grooming. And she works very hard, and she's maintaining that rent. But she doesn't have much left over to save towards that down payment on the home. I noticed in the ad for the West Glenwood Pasture Development Group, they quoted County Commissioner Mike Sampson that they want to have a beneficial area for people that already live there. What about the people that work here that don't live here? I was looking at the study commission by the Joint Valley Communities on Roaring Fork. 2,400 people come into Glenwood are imported every day. 16% of those, or 360, come up from Roaring Fork. That means the other 2,040 either get off at exit 116 or down here at the circle. I'd say probably the larger share of those are coming in from Parachute, those areas. I talk to those people every day. My bank tellers, the cleaner of the apartments where I stay, construction workers, they're all coming in. So when you talk about worried about the traffic that this is going to impose upon you, most of that traffic's already coming through that circle. It's already there. It's interesting. I looked into the help wanted pages. I counted 180 help wanted signs in yesterday's paper. Then I went for the rentals. I found 3, 2 of which weren't in Glenwood. Just one was for Glenwood. It was interesting, someone brought up the fact that they're worried about safety and not having enough police officers. Well, maybe 12 of those could go into that new development over on West Glenwood, and you'd be able to afford to have some police officers live in this city, as well as school teachers. So many others. We need to be looking out for our children and the people who are that age. Thank you. I support the development.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Jean Smith?
Hi, thank you for considering this and listening to everyone. I live on Melray Road. We've owned that property since 1990. As far as the proposed sidewalk down Melray, it sounds like a great idea, but it would be taking out my huge trees that have been there for probably 100 years, and part of my parking area for my tenants and for my own parking area. And so that would not really work for me. My property goes right to the street right now. I walk Donegan and Melray Road every morning with my dogs. I don't really seem to have a problem. Of course, I'm just aware of traffic. There's not that much on Donegan, but there is a lot of traffic around the new school over there. And so that would only increase, of course, with this development. West Glenwood Sanitation is the one that takes care of all of West Glenwood. And that is my highest utility bill at this time from the new plant out there. So I don't know how that would possibly handle, this proposed development. The pictures showed 4-story buildings directly behind my property because I'm at the bottom of Melray. And they would be 25 foot from my back fence. My building is 2 stories high. I cannot imagine 4 stories directly behind me. It would be just immense. We love this land, this country, this town. My late husband said we lived in God's country. And it's time to pause big development and work to help heal the community and to establish the infrastructure to protect the physical, emotional, and mental health of our community. And we love the small community feel, and that's why we always love Glenwood Springs and this valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Elmore?
Hello, my name is Scott Elmore. I am 26 years old. I have been a resident of Glenwood Springs for 23 of those years. My family has been here I believe since the late 50s, actually. The reason I bring some of this, well, let me tell a little bit more about myself real quick. I grew up here and I loved being here. When I graduated, went to school, I would have loved to have come back here and been a worker and contributed back to this community. And that's what I'm doing. I graduated and I work in information technology in the Valley. I have no student debt. I have my bachelor's. I also live in my parents' basement because that is the only financially responsible place for me to be in this valley. I'm happy that every single one of you have brought your concerns here, and it would be irresponsible of you not to yourself and your neighbors. And that is why I am here, because I would be doing a disservice to the people of my demographic. I do support the annexation and development because in reality, the simplest way to fix a problem that is at the root supply and demand is to increase supply. There will be growing pains around this. Maybe accepting the current proposal at face value is not the best idea. I am a current resident of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and I do consider myself a young professional. I'm not someone who is looking for these $15 an hour jobs that are being posted around here, not to disregard anyone who is. But odds are I will not be a resident of Glenwood Springs in the future. My family, may be the last of my family that will be here, because I, like many of the other people who are already here, simply can't afford to be here. And I am told I did everything right. I got a professional bachelor's, I have no student debt, and I still can't afford to be here. And I'm engaged, and even with my fiance in a double income family, also a professional, I cannot afford to be here. Please consider that there are residents who are already here and who are people who all work here who would love to continue being here. Thank you.
Linda Brent?
Hi, I'm Linda Brent. I've lived here for 24 years now. And I'm going to read something that somebody typed out, and a lot of it is my feeling also. And it says, "We are fortunate to live here. It is friendly, family-oriented, and it is the sunniest place in town. R2 Development from Cincinnati wants to build some 330 unaffordable units in West Glenwood behind the mall. This will destroy us. They have lawyers, architects, traffic engineers, and even a PR lady. She says the massive development will bring a new future to a blighted area." Wow, thanks for the info. How about the traffic nightmares? How about our small town character? How about our safety, our welfare, and quality of life? Do they plan on a 4-lane Melray, Donegan, and Storm King Road? Will the roundabouts be wide enough so you can escape the next fire? It is just money to them. And it really is just money to them. All they want is the income. The city, I have a feeling all they want is the income. We live in West Glenwood, and our area can't handle 1,000 more people. All the other apartment complexes that are going in this town are gonna kill our one grocery store, our one Walmart that's smaller than the Rifle Walmart, our one Target that doesn't have any food hardly in it. Glenwood just can't support this kind of growth in our area anymore. And I think until we develop more shopping, more grocery stores, more places for people to get things, they need to really consider what's put in. Yes, we need housing, but we don't need 1,000 people on 12 acres. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mark Gibson.
Hi, my name is Mark Gibson. I live on the corner of Donegan and Ponderosa Circle. My goal is to speak for less than my allotted 3 minutes. Obviously, I'm going to have to pick up the pace a little to achieve that goal. I wanted to thank all of you for your service. The time's at a premium. I wanted to speak about safety and protections for all the people that live and work and stay north of I-70. But time is at a premium. I wanted to address all of my perceived fallacies of the developers' presentations over the last year and a half. But time is at a premium. Last Tuesday, I walked Donegan Road from Melray to Storm King Road. I counted 12 established houses, and by established, I mean 40 to 60 years old, on the north side of Donegan. Of these 12 houses / homes, at least 10 of them had south-facing picture windows, presumably so they can enjoy the 4 seasons of Red Mountain from the Colorado River up to the peaks. Building 40 townhouses, 32 feet high, just 60 feet from the property lines will, for all intents and purposes, obliterate the views of Red Mountain. This, in my opinion, would represent the epitome of what a bad neighbor would be. Item number 2 on the city planning and zoning denial of this development recommended installation of story poles to illustrate to the citizens what the visual impacts of this development would be. Over the past year and a half, there have been multiple requests for story poles, and I've yet to hear the developer address this. In summary, I and over 1,700 people that signed the online petition in opposition to this development encourage you to not approve this.
That's all I have.
Yes, Tony. Yes, we will now, there's no one else online. We'll now close the hearing to, public hearing comment, public comment part of the hearing, and we'll take a 5-minute break.
Mr. Mayor, right as we close that, there were 2 hands that went up.
I didn't see them. Did they just come up, Jen? Right.
Can we just take it upstairs?
I'm just gonna pee out the back door right there.
Try not, yeah.
Do we want that door open?
Huh.
If I can see.
Actually, I'm trouble.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We've closed public comment. We're now going to allow the developer to come up and respond to some of the comments they heard. We'll then have questions for the developer, for staff, and we'll go from there. So if the developer wants to come up and respond to anything they've heard throughout public comment, now's the time.
I got it.
We good? Hey. Hey, guys. Chad Lee. I'm attorney at Balcom and Green, 818 Colorado Avenue. I represent Glenwood Partnership, and our firm has represented the Demos family for over 40 years. I would just like to speak on a couple things. I'll be brief. I know it's past my bedtime for sure. I've heard the term open space and pasture thrown around. I've heard some discussion about water needs, and I'd like to stick up for our comp plan. So in terms of the entitlement status of the lot, this lot was purchased by the Demos family right after they organized their construction company in 1960. They established the road easement and right-of-way for the future Storm King Road. 20 years later, in 1980, the mall parcel was carved off, and the Demos family went to Garfield County for a special use permit. And that special use permit is still in place today. That special use permit, I'm not going to pass this out, but this is the Glenwood Business Center. This is what is entitled today. Here are the two buildings that are built, and this is the rest of the buildings that can be constructed. 13 additional buildings, all kinds of parking. And of course, in 1981, yeah. Of course, in 1981, there weren't design standards, there weren't nearly the landscaping standards, and there weren't nearly the off-site traffic impacts that we do today. And specifically, this entitled special use permit generates more traffic than this application you see in front of you. And that special use permit's been in place since 1981. Of course, it's recorded with the Garfield County Clerk and Recorder. 1981, all the utilities and roads were put in place to serve this new development, including water, stormwater, sanitary sewer, gas, electric, and phone lines. The point is, it's not a pasture, it's an entitled property. And I think the decision that we have today is which project is better for Glenwood. Like Floyd's talked about earlier, we've had interest from auto dealerships, large big box retail, mall expansion, Kmart, but we thought this was the most appropriate application. In terms of water rights, West Glenwood needs water, Glenwood needs water. We haven't talked too much about the benefits that this annexation brings to the city, but specifically, the Demos family has agreed to dedicate 614 shares of the Reynolds and Kane ditch to the city. And this project will be zero-scape, so that water will be the city's. And finally, I'd like to stick up for our comprehensive plan. I work with it every day. And I'm a little disappointed when I hear that it's outdated and that we need to stop all decision-making before we rewrite it, because a comprehensive plan is a document that we write in the absence of a specific application so that we throw emotion out the window and we have proper planning. And it is our guiding document going forward. It's a bit like a constitution in terms of land use decisions. And that is our current comprehensive plan. Extensive public input went into that. We all sat in rooms at the community center. We put sticky notes on maps. We took polls, and we had some very specific language about this parcel. Plan envisions the Glenwood Springs Mall and the properties immediately north be integrated and redeveloped into a mixed-use community, including a significant component of medium to high-density residential uses with an internal system of sidewalks and community spaces, thus creating a center focal point for the west end of town. The city encourages and supports the annexation of the property immediately north of the Glenwood Mall to facilitate a compatible and coordinated mixed-use development. And it takes 10 years for economic cycles to bring in an institutional developer like this into West Glenwood in response to our comp plan. Housing was an issue then, It's an even bigger issue now. In 2010, we foresaw this problem. Over the last decade, housing prices in Glenwood have escalated so that many households can no longer afford to buy or rent a home. Local market forces are not providing housing opportunities for the entire spectrum of households needed to sustain a community. Employees who provide essential community functions in general cannot live in Glenwood Springs due to the high cost of housing relative to wages. That was in 2010. And now we have a situation where restaurants can't even stay open because they can't find help, because they can't find people to live here. And in terms of an updated public opinion poll, there was one commissioned by this body this year in July, came out July 2021 this year. The top priority for the community was workforce housing. This application is what workforce housing looks like. Thank you.
Kathy, you want this, can I get it to you? Thank you so much. I just wanted to see.
Hi, my name is Haley Carmer. I'm an attorney at Garfield and Hecht, and I represent R2 Development, the developer. Wanted to thank all of you on council for your time and attention to this application at the last meeting and tonight, and for sticking it out for a little bit longer here. Just wanted to make a few points a little more substantively on the application in response to things that we've heard. One person spoke today saying that we are creating a problem so that we can create the solution for it, but we see it the opposite, that we are the solution to an existing problem. The 2019 housing study that you all helped commission saw the need for 2,000 units, and that's to deal with needs today, not for future growth. So the hole we're filling is for a current need, not for growth. It's a problem now, and that's the problem we're trying to solve. The density of the project has reduced from over 400 units as originally proposed down to 292 apartments and up to 40 townhomes. Those townhomes will be sold, they won't be rented, so that adds to the available for sale housing in the city that is certainly lacking. And everybody, we've heard a lot tonight talking about affordable and middle income and workforce housing, but density is a key component of that, in addition to the deed restrictions and other options that you have for ensuring affordable housing. We heard a member of the public speak today talking about the simple supply and demand concept, and density helps with affordability because single families there's more cost per unit and therefore more expensive. So density helps in the sense of affordability by bringing more units at the same time to keep those costs down. The other, I think, benefit of rentals is that the people that live and work here live in those, and they're not second homes or alternatives for people that don't actually live here that are staying vacant. They're actually used and occupied for our residents. The other benefit of this project is the affordable housing component that we've incorporated into the annexation agreement. Because this is an annexation, what we're doing with the affordability part of this is more than what your code would require, and that's the benefit of, again, an annexation. 20% of the rentals will be resident occupied. At least 10% will be also affordable to 90% AMI, or alternatively 20% at 100 AMI. So there's options here for the affordability concept, and we want to, and we're proud of that. Happy to be contributing to the community in that way. It's also worth pointing out that we're putting homes in an area where there is adequate utilities. The water, sewer, electricity, everything's already extended to this property. We're not putting it, somewhere up like 4 Mile or Mid-Valley where you have to extend these services, and that's a lot more difficult. Staff has already explained that the water capacity the city currently has is sufficient to support this development, and we're also bringing the raw water, as Chad said, which will help ease the burden on the city's potable water system during the summer when irrigation is a huge draw. So this is a benefit to all of the West Glenwood community and gives the city the opportunity to expand that raw water irrigation from what it is currently today. We've obviously heard a lot about fire safety and evacuation, and obviously for good reason, but this project helps solve that, or contribute to the solution, or at least moving in the right direction on that particular issue. We're going to be providing up to an acre of land for the construction of the new fire station in West Glenwood. In addition to that, the development will be paying fire emergency fees and impact fees, and those fees will go to help construct the firehouse too. So not only is the city getting the land it needs, but the impact fees are going to fill that coffer to help support the construction of that firehouse as well. We're also going to be contributing up to $100,000 for the ongoing planning, emergency evacuation planning, and the infrastructure needed to make that a reality. There's the A-breaks onto the highway that are already in the works. The money that we're contributing can go to help fund that to make it a reality. And there's also currently an existing easement over the mall property that benefits the property we're talking about tonight. And that easement will allow a direct access to Highway 6 and 24, regardless of whether the mall gets redeveloped in the event of an emergency. Right now, there's no way to get down there, but if this project is approved and developed, there will be an access point there that's, if anything, there for emergencies. So regardless of what happens with the mall, we'll have another outlet there that would benefit the entire West Glenwood community, not just the development we're talking about here. The other benefit of bringing people into town is that we reduce the number of people coming in and out of it. That helps with gridlock. It helps keeps people here, and we don't have the rush to get out, to get down Valley if they're already living here. R2 has also agreed to make a portion of its open space available for public use, which is a benefit to the community. And the parkland fees that would be associated with this project will go to help the city improve and potentially expand its park system in a way that the city feels is most appropriate. The bike lanes and pedestrian improvements will also benefit the community by making it a more walkable community, which is part of the vision of the comp plan. And it will certainly help with the safety aspects as well. The phasing of the project will also help ease the transition with the existing community. We're looking at doing this in 2 phases. One with, the properties along Donegan first, and then the southern portion of the property is under the annexation agreement, tied to some extent to the redevelopment of the mall, so we can make sure that those things get integrated properly, and also give the community time to acclimate to the new transition. At the last meeting, one of the members of the public mentioned this, and it's the question that the council needs to consider tonight, which is whether the city would be better off now with this than it is now with this development. And we're confident that the answer to that is yes. The comp plan expresses a strong preference for annexation of this property and development of the property exactly as R2 is proposing. We're transitioning the density from north to south, away from the single family, closer to the commercial. So we're developing the property as the comp plan has anticipated. To quote the comp plan, this should be developed as medium to high density residential uses with an internal system of sidewalks and community spaces, creating a center focal point for the west end of town. If you look at the site plan for the project, that's exactly what we're doing here. We've got the clubhouse, the recreational amenities all in the center, and sidewalks throughout that help with the connectivity from north to south and to make this more walkable. The comp plan also acknowledges that small town character can be hard to define, and it's more not necessarily about size, but character. And we feel that this development enhances that character by integrating the neighborhoods, providing that central common area, bringing a restaurant to West Glenwood where people can socialize and dine, which isn't really there now, and also incorporates architectural styles and sizes that are already existing in the city. I know there was a spreadsheet in your packet showing existing housing stock. The densities per acre that are reflected there are consistent with what we're proposing here. Our density is about 27 units per acre, and that's consistent with Six Canyons, lofts, and other areas. So it's not like this is the first project that is of a similar size or density that's already happening in town. So we're consistent with what's going on and not trying to change that. The 2-story townhomes along Donegan are the same height. They're 27 feet, not 32, which is similar to, or the same size as the existing townhomes that are to the west of Storm King. The 3-story walk-ups are also similar in size and nature to existing developments and buildings in town, including buildings downtown. And then the 4-story building is modeled after the Hotel Colorado in that mercantile building style. So we're not trying to bring in something new. We've taken what's already existing in town and bringing that to West Glenwood, which adds to the cohesiveness of the city itself. We've got the similarities between what's downtown and bringing that to West Glenwood. We've also heard a lot from others about needing to put a pause on development and not move forward until we update the comp plan. And if council agrees that there are changes to be made, you guys can certainly do that. But today you have to follow the comp plan that you have in place. The comp plan that we're talking about today was a big reason for development of the urban renewal authority in West Glenwood. So it was clearly relevant and important just a few years ago, and we think it's still relevant and important and helpful today. And, not following the comp plan that you have in place and putting hold on development doesn't bode well for future growth and smart growth in town if there's no security or certainty about what rules and regulations are going to apply when people look to develop here or move here or build. So I think it's important to make sure that we follow the comp plan that we have because it was, as Chad explained, so well vetted and still is relevant today. If there is one thing that's clear from the public comments, it's that there are currently issues with infrastructure and other concerns in West Glenwood. But instead of blaming this project for those issues, we want to be part of the solution. We want to do that by bringing private dollars to help solve those solutions, to help solve those problems and also be a partner with the community. Some of the major benefits from this project to the city as a whole are the water rights we've already talked about, $860,000 in water system fees, significant sewer system fees, $1.3 million in parkland fees, over $800,000 in school fees, over $300,000 in fire impact fees, and that's excluding the value of the land that would be contributed to make that fire station a reality. The off-site infrastructure improvements that R2 is willing to install, namely all of the bike lanes and road improvements along Storm King, Melray, and Donegan, amount to about $4 million, and that's a benefit directly to all citizens of the city. And with the affordable housing, that's another $3 million or so in subsidies that will benefit future residents. If the project is denied, there's, as Chad explained, clearly an avenue for development in the county, but that if that were to come to fruition, the benefits of this project go away and the city loses some control over how that happens. But this project gives the city control over growth and how it happens and the ability to make this a good project for the city and to obtain the benefits we've talked about. Your staff and trained professionals have clearly supported the project, and that's because they understand the good that it can do for the city. And we certainly hope the council can see that good too. So we've got members of our team here tonight and then also online to answer any questions you might have about the project going forward. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I think now's the time we want to ask developers questions.
I have a little bit short. But I don't know if it's for Haley or someone on your staff to answer.
Depends on what the questions we want to have.
Okay. Well, one of the themes, microphone.
Oh,
I think I did.
I broke it.
I trusted you.
Is that good? I don't know sign language.
Put it right here.
Sorry. One of the themes that we heard through public comment was, and you addressed the traffic issues, and a good point that I think Haley made was that, if people are living here, then they don't have to travel here, and that actually helps to reduce traffic. But one of the themes that I heard from the public comment, and that I have a concern about, is public safety. If there's a fire, if there's another kind of natural disaster, an emergency, a flood, if there's a large police presence needed somewhere, how does the developer address that issue for evacuation when you're going to stick more people and more cars there? Is there any concerns there? Have you thought about that, or is that sort of not what your issue is? Thank you.
Well, first of all, it absolutely is our issue.
Okay.
And I would say that candidly, when this project's done, we probably would have the largest investment in West Glenwood. So anything that happens in West Glenwood, I think is very important to us. So absolutely is a concern. We believe that having a new fire department in West Glenwood would be a very important item for life safety, particularly if there was a fire. We're looking at defensible design of the landscape in our project so that it also doesn't necessarily jump over. And we've been working with our architects on what that would look like as well. Having the additional water capacity that the ditch fans would bring also, we believe, would help combat this. Having an exit through the mall, which does not exist today, would help as part of that. As it was brought up by the person from CDOT, there needs to be a multi-jurisdictional cooperation, and that what they really need is to put together an overall evacuation plan. We've offered to help and provide our experts who do this in other cities at our cost as part of that $100,000 to help put that program in place so that the city could actually develop that program and get all of the other groups involved, including CDOT and including the county, which would be very important. And we've talked about also, one of the things is how do you access onto the highway if they close it off? And so again, a lot of this, if you were to talk to your fire chief, is about cooperation and having an overall plan. So this is important, and I think we're actually addressing this issue by providing a lot of the resources to get this started.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Other questions? Or developer or staff?
Is this time for all of our questions?
I think so, yeah.
We have a lot of, okay. I am happy to go. I do have a few questions, and I don't want to be overly repetitive, but I'll let either staff or the developer decide who should answer these. Actually, I think my first question is for Carl. Can you please explain our significance of our decisions this evening? As far as, if we are, I mean, just bluntly, because I've heard a lot of detail about the development.
No pressure there at all.
Yeah, we are talking about
What does the meaning of
approving an annexation or the zoning.
Annexation and zoning, so, sure. So, as you know, annexation is a statutory process whereby property in the county is brought into the city.
Which gives us control.
Yeah, and so, the city controls that process in the sense that you're not obligated to annex. It is a negotiation, which is also why there's a lengthy annexation agreement that you can work off of in your packet. The other component of this is zoning underneath the statute. When you annex a property, you have 60 days to zone it. So what we're talking about, we've looked at a kind of a site plan, but what is really reflective of what the zoning is, reflecting density, the types of housing units, the types of uses, like you would think of if you were in a commercial zone district or in a residential medium density zone district, or however you want to think about it. It's convention. It's but it is in fact zoning. It determines those types of things.
Building height.
Building height, density. What it doesn't determine is the specific layout, the specific site plan. And so this project, if you did approve it, would need to come back for a site-specific development, or a site plan for the development, which would be a second opportunity for public comment and for you to weigh in on what it looks like.
It's like, like that.
Those kinds of
Specific buildings, okay.
Specific buildings. Jen and I working on this as we were thinking about how it relates to the West Glenwood Mall property. Most likely, the process that we would recommend would be an overall site plan, which would include both parcels, a master planning process that is available underneath our code. That's only available if this property is part of the city and has been zoned. So that's kind of the decision matrix you're in. So that's the mechanics of the decision. I think the question was more like, what are the implications of the decision or something?
Well, exactly, and for the benefit of the public, that just to be clear, we're not approving a specific development tonight.
You're not
or denying.
a specific site plan tonight. You're approving you would be approving bringing that property into the city, and you would be approving zoning, which determines, like I said, density, types of housing, those kinds of things. The other thing, though, I do think it's important to talk about a little bit is that because it is an annexation and it is a negotiation, if this property were currently within the city and say zoned commercially, they would have a whole bunch of uses by right, and things that we wouldn't necessarily be able to negotiate for, like say a fire station site, or water rights dedication, or additional funding for, the emergency access. Those types of things wouldn't be available to us to negotiate for, and that's kind of one of the unique features of the annexation process, is that it's much more of a negotiation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
That's a really good question. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just
Okay.
ask one follow-up question?
Mhm.
Carl, I asked a question before, and just so it's in the public understands it. We could technically approve the annexation tonight, but not the zoning. We have a period of time. Thank you, Tony. We have a period of time after that to approve the zoning, correct?
You do. You have 60 days.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay. So then my next question, I think, went to a comment that Haley just made about the water rights. Can you explain that a little bit more? I guess that was one of the first times I had heard about that. And
I'm gonna do that because it'll just be easier.
okay. And does that,
Haley's question.
and how does that relate to, my understanding was that the ditch water was going to irrigate the property.
Yeah, but as you'll recall, right now, it doesn't have that, it hasn't been developed into commercial properties, for its special use permit. So it has, currently 654 shares of the Reynolds and Kane ditch are used to irrigate that property. Obviously, when it is developed, it will not require that much, and so if you look at the draft annexation agreement, and per our charter and code, we look to take in the water that was used on the property historically. So that's the 654 shares. We will lease back a very small portion of that to provide raw water irrigation for what landscaping is used on the property. So all the outside irrigation will be provided, continue to be provided from Reynolds and Kane, but it's going to be maybe a tenth of what was used on the current property.
And that's untreated water.
That's untreated water, and you'll remember that when Matt and I were talking about kind of our goal on the water system is to move away from potable water for outside irrigation to the maximum extent possible. And so,
right.
Reynolds and Kane is one of the more reliable water sources we have on the west side, or probably the most reliable water source on the west side that we can use for that kind of a non-potable system for irrigation purposes. Our goal would be to expand ultimately that system to other properties for irrigation purposes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. Just one clarification, it's 614, but otherwise.
So I can't do that.
Okay, 614. Okay, I'm not going to ask, I had some specific questions relating again to the site plan and the development, but I think I'll hold off on those. But I did have a question on, as far as ADA accessible units, it's my understanding from ADA is that in a multifamily building and development, you would need a certain number of accessible units, which in my mind could also serve as a senior living units, things like that, which, being more accessible units, they could serve a more targeted population. Are those planned in this development?
So first of all, by code, we do have to have ADA units, and we have to have a certain amount of handicap parking, and there is very specific, which is a federal law as it relates to providing those types of things. So all of that will be met in this project. I would just want to add, I have a child with special needs. All my wife does is universal design, which tries to go beyond just the ADA requirements. So it's not about fitting the requirement, but there's also the dignity of someone that's in a wheelchair and making sure that they're actually having the same entrance that everybody else does and being treated the way everybody else is. So it is something beyond the actual code that we are required to do that's candidly near and dear to my heart.
Do you have any idea how many units that would be in this development, just kind of?
I don't know if Matthew, our architect, is on the phone, but we can get you that answer. I don't.
Okay.
I don't know the actual number for that. Sorry.
Also, then another question probably for you. The PUD plan on the uses of the plan, it prohibits adult and child care, not allowed in the development. Is this a condition of the developers, or is this somehow coming from the city? And I'm wondering if you know, our code allows for a small home childcare, which I believe is under 6.
I'll take that.
Is that something that would be allowed?
State regulations right now currently indicate you have to have a dedicated attached fenced playground. So if a residence had it, then you wouldn't be able to do an in-home center.
Okay.
Are you talking about like a detached center, like a commercial center?
No, I'm talking about an in-home center, like in the townhomes or something. That would not be allowed?
But I will, if I could address one comment that we have thought about, because we think childcare is very important. And as you know, there is a childcare facility, or there was, specifically in the Demos property. There was something with the particular owner which had nothing to do with the business or wanting to have childcare. We have specifically, if you look at the plan, there is a corner, literally a triangle behind their property that's not included in the property that would be part of ours. And the Demos has specifically cut that out with the idea that that would be used for a childcare facility. A childcare facility has to have a certain amount of outdoor space. So whether it's that, and as a matter of fact, in our discussions, and they've been early, if we had all tried to develop that property, that corner, that triangle, and I'm sorry I don't have the thing up here on display, that we would look at alternative uses, because childcare is something that we think is as one person brought up today, we clearly realize is an issue.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Then also, I think this is a question for staff. In looking, I have a question on how the parkland dedication has been calculated and handled. I think just a rough calculation, it looks like somewhere between 5 and 6 acres would be dedicated based on residents as calculated from our code based on the number of dwelling units. I know they get allowances for private amenities within the development, things like that. But so can you explain that, Trent? How?
So developments have the opportunity to either dedicate land or a fee in lieu of land, or a partial waiver and fee. So there's a lot of different options that they have. They have indicated to us thus far that they intend to do a payment in lieu of, and that is just based on the value of the land that is required per resident occupying each unit. So that, in this instance, amounted to approximately $1.4 million. Now, I think if you look at the annexation agreement, there is a conversation there about some of those funds being offset by some of the improvements being made by the applicant. And those, again, are things that we would look at in more specific detail and with the development review application in the future.
And that 1.4 million is calculated on what type of acreages that was required?
Well, in this instance, approximately 6 acres that would be required for parkland space for this number of units.
Right. Do we have ability to do some negotiation on needed parkland in that area, as in kind of, you know, chop up the?
Well, I mean, you have the opportunity to do negotiations because this is annexation, but the code also allows for negotiations in terms of, you know, either actual dedication or partial waivers of fees in lieu of some land dedication. So I would say, and again, you know, more of this would be looked at in detail with, you know, future development permit applications. But, you know, I think that the applicant actually has some intentions for park space with future redevelopment of the mall site. But again, those details have not been provided to us just yet.
Okay, I'll hold off the rest of my comments on that till our comment period. I think that's all the questions I have right now.
Other questions for staff or the applicant? Paul.
I got it, thank you. Carl, you addressed the annexation. Usually when we look at an annexation or I would think that when a city looks at an annexation of a piece of property, I understand the value of the negotiating, but you also look at what's the future income off that property for the city. And it usually entails some retail establishments, that type of thing, that it's going to help us support infrastructure we don't really have a property tax on property, and we really rely on sales tax. So can you give me some kind of scope that you and Jen may have considered on where are we going to see the income that we need to support additional costs for infrastructure, because we will need things in the future?
Yeah, so just as a starting point, if you only look at the income generated from an annexed piece of property, or any property in the city, you would never allow residential development anywhere. I mean, and I don't.
But I meant in the sense of
I don't mean
annexation.
to say that flippantly, but
Yeah.
I think it's just important to recognize that residential development is typically meeting other needs in the code other than just income generation. And so, the question, the way I tend to look at the cost-benefit analysis on any annexation is, it has to bring something more to you, to the city, than if that parcel would have developed in the city in the absence of that annexation. It's kind of how I just sort of think about it. So does it bring value in other ways? I've seen a lot of machinations to try to come up with how you describe a residential development as being cost positive.
Mm-hmm.
And you really can't get there on a straight line calculation because we don't have a property tax. We have, it's $2.5 million that generates roughly $250,000, $300,000 a year. A little bit more than, yeah. So even call it $500,000 a year in comparison to the $100 million budget that the city has effectively now. It's not very much. So I guess what I'd suggest is that while we haven't done that specific analysis, the things that we had heard identified, and probably the way that I approach this, heard identified in the most recent council strategic planning session was the need for a new fire station site in West Glenwood. You'll recall we had a site under contract right at the beginning of COVID. We were ready to go out and issue debt on that to build that fire station and pulled back from it because of COVID. So that was one of the things you guys identified. You identified affordable housing, and in particular for sale units and workforce housing in that. And you identified the redevelopment of the West Glenwood Mall as goals. And so I think when we sat down and looked at this, as well as expanding our abilities on the water side. So that's kind of how we analyzed it in coming to, I think, a conclusion that what you see in the draft annexation agreement is our attempt to say, okay, if we were going to move forward on this, this is how we balance those costs.
Okay. But we will incur additional costs. I mean, right now we look at our streets and things like that.
I mean, the things that we do, as part of something like this is obviously the streets that we would be annexing, Donegan and Sun King would be rebuilt to the standards that we need. Sidewalks would be put in, bike lanes. You guys should have gotten, if you read through the updated annexation agreement, a realization that we can't annex Mel Ray right now because the county doesn't actually own that. It's an easement. And so unless there were the consent of all of the landowners, I don't think that we could annex it. And so we're going to have to address Mel Ray separately with the county. And just nothing we can do about that. So from that standpoint, you're upgrading all the infrastructure that you can. But yeah, there's absolutely a cost. Is there going to be more users on the water system? Yes. Are there going to be more fees paid on the water system? Absolutely. Sewer is provided by West Glenwood Sanitation, so that's not our system. Will there be additional plowing? Yes. Will there be additional potential calls for service from the police department? There probably will be. It's inside the Unified Fire District, so we're already providing fire services to that location in any case. Will there potentially be more calls for service? Yes. But like I said, those things always occur with any residential development.
And taking on this property annexation, if we do in the future approve some kind of development along the lines of what we're looking at right now, with 600 to 1,000 people possibly being there, does that? I remember some talk with Matt Langhorst earlier that we were right at the cusp of having to do different things with our stormwater waste. Are we already taking care of that? Do we have to incur, or what are we looking at with that?
Well, it's, Yancy, if you.
Thank you, Trent.
I didn't know if your question was citywide or with just this project.
Well, I just didn't know if this was gonna push us over that edge and that additional cost.
I think we'll have already done that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I saw 9,900 something, plus or minus 30, somewhere in the reading I did, so. But you could address it to any degree on the wastewater, on the storm wastewater
Okay.
that we need to do.
All right, good evening. Yancey Nickel with Sopus Engineering out of Carbondale. Carl, I think, answered your question about your state for doing stormwater across the city. I think you're there, and you've been planning that for several years. But with this project, when the mall was developed early on, there's a storm drain system that's already installed all the way from Mitchell Creek to the mall, and it was stubbed and sized to serve this parcel. I do have to say that it was different stormwater intensity calculations and different standards in the county. So we've evaluated and are proposing a very extensive stormwater pre-post detention on site because there is stormwater issues on Highway 6. There has been since I've been here in the 80s. And so we will help solve that problem internally. So we will have no negative impact downstream for stormwater.
Okay. Thank you. Just along Shelley's line of questioning, I'm very interested in, maybe not in this, well, in the negotiation of this development of some park or open space in here. I know that the developer did some stuff to have a tot lot within what he has currently designed, but I just feel that the neighborhood needs access to some kind of green open space within this area that I'd love to see us looking at and being considered.
Good question.
Is that a question? Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, into a question. Good point. All right. So the question was, is that something that you could consider and bring back to us? How's that? Is that good?
Should I answer the question? The one thing I would say is that 20% of the land is public space already, just so we can clarify. And there are additional public spaces that we have on the property. And I think in working with the city, we could look at possibly opening that up overall to the larger community. Again, the key that we always have is making sure that it's done in a way that, there's liability risk, security risk, there's tons of risk, as you can appreciate when you open up private property to public space. So there may be some things that we could do with the city so that we could at least mitigate those liabilities that we would have as part of it. But there are additional public spaces within the property itself. And as I said, the overall site does call, your city requirement does require 20% public space or open space, I should say, within any development. So we are meeting that standard.
You say 20% open space, not public space.
You're correct. I misspoke, yes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Hold on. The phase construction, I just kind of caught that phase 1 and phase 2 so phase 1 and phase 2 would be part of the future negotiating of the site and that type of thing, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, what we envision to tie the two together is, obviously from my standpoint, to tie the two together is that in terms of that phase 2 vertical approval, if you got there, it would require a West Glenwood Mall site plan to have been approved. I think we'll likely see everything together, but it was just a way to try to make sure that those two parcels integrate, which is incredibly important.
And along those lines, when we are looking at whatever development comes forward, is Gary here, or can somebody address in another issue that we're looking at, they spoke to the fact that a multi-story building, there could be some inhibiting factors to firefighting at those upper levels of the building. Am I saying that correctly? And that we might not have the right equipment to take care of that right now. Is that, if we have a 4-story building, are we able to take care of that with the
I think,
equipment we currently have?
yeah, Gary was saying that, I think he is on the line.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. I think
Okay.
maybe watch online, if you're able to.
If he could just address really kind of the whole scope of addressing these multi-tiered buildings and what we're looking at when we allow that to happen,
So
if he's there.
I am on the line.
So Gary, I think the question was, do you have the equipment available to address multi-story buildings?
Yes. And short answer is yes.
That's he.
We can,
Thank you.
we have that recently, well, it seems like recently, but a couple of years ago, that new ladder truck gives us capability for up to 6 stories effectively. So we are covered in that respect. The one drawback I think that I mentioned at an earlier work session is that it's a little more than 1.5 miles from this development, but we do have the capability. It's just going to take a little bit longer than optimum to get there.
And will that be impacted by traffic if you have a
Yes.
fire situation in that area?
Yes, but you know, structure fires, and at some point we need to make that clarification between wildland fire and structure fire, right? When we need a ladder truck for a structure fire, we usually don't have the traffic impacts that we talk about when we talk about a wildfire coming in to the community.
Okay, thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
That's what I have for now. I'm sure I'll have more.
Okay, perfect. One of them. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start up again. Can you all hear me? Okay. I'm curious if you can give us just a verbal understanding of where the egress to the mall would be.
Actually, I'm gonna just defer, actually, the answer can't.
Okay.
So the subdivision plat for the mall has a easement that goes all the way around the whole mall, north side, east side, south, that's dedicated for emergency vehicle and access to this parcel.
Okay, great.
So they could come on the east side out to Highway 6, or they could turn and go back over to Storm King either direction from a legal standpoint.
Okay.
To evacuate the site or get to the site.
So just to confirm, it wouldn't be from the west side because the commercial place, obviously, the existing buildings would run and be in the way on that side. Is that right?
The actual spot where you would cross the property line from the mall to this development is actually on the east end, about 40 feet from the east property line.
Great. Okay, perfect. And kind of a segue to that question, what kind of progress are you making on a plan for the mall and how they're integrating? Like, at what point do you guys think you would be able to present something? And this is no pressure. I'm just kind of curious what the status is to understand how you're making progress on that plan for the mall redevelopment.
That's above my pay grade.
Thank you, Yancy.
As you obviously are alluding, no, we have the mall under contract. It's not been very long. We've been working on a plan as far as how that would look and how the two of them would integrate. We're kind of in the early phases of that. It's hard for me to kind of, the other thing that we also have to work with as well is make sure, which we are, which again, I'm sure as you are aware, we have to work very closely with Ross. They have a lot of say in what would happen with the mall. And so not only have we been working on a plan, but we've had having good and productive dialogue with them as well as part of that. So clearly we need to come up with a plan that would, we think, work, that would integrate the two projects and also work for Ross.
Perfect, thank you. And I didn't expect you to be considerably far along.
Sure.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit, and my question are about energy usage, water usage. Do you guys, I know that you're planning on doing electric heat for all the units.
Yes.
That can be historically expensive. So I'm curious, go ahead, and I'm going to also ask about solar, so maybe in your answer you could incorporate that in.
So two things, it could be, but it's really more for the units themselves. It becomes quite expensive when it's a larger space. We've been talking about that for the residential. I don't know if we'd be able to do that same thing for the retail component, particularly with all different retail tenants. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. I think as far as solar, we do a bunch of things that relates to solar. One of the things that we're actually working on right now that we are working on and we've implemented is actually, which is your biggest emission is your HVAC units. When you think about carbon emissions, which is what somebody was talking about, it's also your biggest use of electricity. There is an actual solar program where the solar panel on the HVAC system actually heats, and I'm the layman, and so I'm going to apologize on this, but in essence, not only does it power the HVAC system, but it heats up or cools the HVAC system. So it greatly reduces the amount of energy that you use, and it greatly reduces the carbon emission that you would get from those units. It has something that we have been exploring in some of our other projects. I think that one person brought up, obviously, climate change. We are continually looking at those things. Every city is discussing those things. So there's the things that you would do that would possibly be LEED certified, that you would provide, that you get points. But I have to say that the biggest thing that you find within these projects is heating and cooling these projects with an HVAC system.
Still in that vein of questioning, talk to me about, you've received so much feedback from the community regarding water usage, and not just, I understand the irrigation, thank you so much everyone for explaining that, but more like the treated water, potable water. You have received significant feedback from the community that there's a concern for an increase of this number. Have you guys taken that into consideration? Have you, are there any offsetting ideas that you guys have incorporated?
Today, there's nothing that we've done, but I can tell you two things. One is we have talked about what I would call, as far as the landscape and looking at that irrigation, which is not what you're asking about, but I think that is at least one component of it. I would be open to what that would look like. I don't know. I mean, obviously, one thing, I don't know whether it would be amenable to the type of tenants or whatever, is you could put timers on, you know, showers as an example, and they could potentially turn them back on, but they do this in Australia, so we can laugh, but they're doing it. You know, I'm open to what that might be. I mean, we don't, in our leases, control the water usage of our tenants, but there may be things that we could do to encourage that. I don't have specifics, that's just one example that I realize is being done in other countries.
And I asked you off the cuff, like you weren't planning on having to answer that. So thank you for giving even one example. Ultimately, I think that, do you know if there's like a water consultant who could come in at a stage and kind of help you reduce the amount of water each unit is using? Do you know if that's a resource out there?
No, actually, what I was gonna say is that, we actually call out resource conservation in the annexation agreement, paragraph 9.
Great.
I'm sure you read through it.
You know what? I totally did. I don't know.
Because this is something that obviously Matt and I in particular are kind of big on. And so that paragraph, our proposed paragraph would be that CDSG shall revise the PUD landscaping to provide drought-resistant xeriscaping and design all improvements to provide leading-edge and best management practices for conservation fixtures and practices for the development. And really what I think Matt and I envision in there is that we would like to, if you approve this, you know, the development wouldn't go to CO for probably 2 years. We'd really like to try to utilize this as kind of a test bed for absolutely the best conservation measures we could use on the water side, and then see if we could then scale that up for the rest of the community. And something that I know, you know, outside of the context of this that we've talked about is starting to implement some programs citywide on taking conservation to that next level in terms of fixtures and incentives to do that through our water department.
Okay, and then
Can I add a question to that? Does that include net zero opportunities as far as energy usage and that type of thing?
Well, absolutely. That we would be trying to achieve that. I mean, recognizing right now that Glenwood Springs is, you know, since 3 years ago, I feel like I lost a year or two in there. 19 yeah, that 2019 that we have been 100% renewable as a city. And certainly while we don't have an energy code that requires net zero, and I think you might be thinking of like Picken County or Aspen, that certainly we are always looking for ways to improve that efficiency and you know, try to get that down. I mean, I suggest probably we should start with the city facilities first. Thank you. I was like drawing a blank. But absolutely, that's really what this is about. The goal of that paragraph is to get us on all of those fronts to be as efficient as possible. It also calls out not using natural gas, and the reason for that is the emissions factors, right? It is a big producer of carbon, and trying to reduce that as much as possible, given that our electric system is 100% renewable.
And then just one more question, a point of clarification. I think this was mentioned at either one of these meetings and or some work session we did, but a single-family home uses 4 times more water than a 2-bedroom condo of like this density. Is that the equation we were using? Something similar to that?
Yeah, it's something similar to that. I think they actually, Yancy did a calculation.
We did a calculation. For every 20 units we have here, we'd use about the same water as one house.
Wow, okay.
Her question's a little different than that. I think it's 0.6. 0.6 water consumptive for an apartment or rental unit, townhome versus a single family.
I was referring to the exterior watering of the house.
Oh, sure. Okay, great.
They're kind of two different things.
Yes.
Yancey's referring to the standard sort of, here's how we
Look at how we calculate EQRs for purposes of system improvement fees, which is slightly different than actual use, which is kind of the 20 to 1 versus the 0.6 to 1, the differential there.
And there's one thing I wanted to add, and Carl and Chad both kind of hit on it. It's 615 shares of the ditch. That is a very reliable water that's even in drought years is ran. And in long-term planning for the city, you could expand that to irrigate a lot of the landscaping that's in Western Glenwood that's on your potable system. That could really reduce that summer peaking. It would take some planning and time to get infrastructure, but to give you an idea, we're gonna need maybe 1 or 2 acres of that irrigation water back for our project, which leaves 10 acres of physical water. And if you went to sprinkling, that water would cover a lot more because it's used as flood irrigation now.
Yeah.
That is almost a CFS, which is millions and millions of gallons of water.
So you're saying that irrigation water that has been historically dedicated and not used because of the special use permit could be reallocated to other subdivisions, et cetera, to do more of a ditch water, non-potable water?
Correct. And it's being used now. It's flood irrigating that property that is tremendous amount of water, and we don't need hardly any of that with the.
Yeah.
So it could serve a lot of West Glenwood and take.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back up with that.
Shelley?
Shelley had a question.
She already did, but
Question
it
about
probably
the water.
relates.
I just had a quick follow-up on the water conservation, which I am completely behind. But when we talk about xeriscaping, how does that relate to, part of our, the beauty of the city is the tree canopy that we have. We're a Tree City USA, and that canopy helps cool the city and maintain.
Yeah, what I would say is that, one of the biggest users, and Nancy can probably give me the calculations on the top of his head, is that bluegrass lawn that
Right.
everybody wants to have.
Right.
And that's the thing that is one of those huge water users. The trees and the appropriate trees for the environment here, the appropriate shrubs are way low water users and achieve that goal of that canopy that we're so well known for.
Okay, so do we need any special language to
Well, I think that.
maintain the trees, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, Planning Commission is looking at updating the code currently with regard to that. 2, you haven't seen the site plan yet.
Right.
So they're gonna have to come in and comply with whatever the landscaping standards are at the time. And so hopefully we have those dialed in. And to some extent, the code addresses to some extent, kind of the appropriate for this environment, like the tree choices that you would make.
Great, thanks.
And if I may, real quick, spending a lot of time in trying to analyze and come up with this, not just for this project, for the last several years with the drought going in multiple western states. The xeriscape approach is native plants, grasses, shrubs, trees, and the trees would stay the same. And kind of the approach is it would be take about half the water that we typically do today and be conservative besides the grow in it. So that's the approach. It's not rocks, it's not concrete, it's not asphalt, it's just using native plants. So you don't have to irrigate it except for a couple of years. Then it's self with rainfall, and maybe some supplement. And so we're looking at least a 50% reduction in what we typically would irrigate in communities today.
That's fantastic, thanks. Yep.
Chad? I've got a question. No, I want to spin back over to the use by right. I tried to read all 2,634 pages of this application, and we've often talked about the use by right as it currently exists. You showed us an exhibit here recently, which I hadn't seen before, but it certainly got my attention, and I took a picture of it. I wish that it was in our old system, we would put it on the screen right now and talk about that a little bit. That special use permit issued by Garfield County back, I suppose it doesn't expire.
That's right, it's vested, yep.
So it had 15 buildings that were warehouses and office spaces and 711 parking spaces in it. And the only access from that was Storm King Road, compared to the 579 parking spaces, I think, that's in the current plan. Does that define, does this picture that I took really define, like, if the city didn't annex this and they just went ahead to develop this, they could do this currently?
Yeah, and that was in the initial application, but that's why I wanted to highlight it. This is a special use permit It was approved in 81. We've broken ground, which under the law, we've got vested rights to continue with it. We were just over at the BOCC for a hearing, and Commissioner Martin himself acknowledged that we could pull building permits tomorrow. Obviously, the market demand needs to be there, but yeah, that's what can happen out there right now.
When was that approved? What year?
1981.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a while ago.
2 buildings were actually constructed out of that Glenwood Business Center that are sitting there today on that corner. So it was just shocking to me, and I just wanted to verify that would allow 15 commercial warehouse and office spaces and 711 parking spaces, which is huge density in that area with only one way in and out.
It is, and of course, there wasn't the public opposition in 1981 that there is now. The vehicle trips, the ADTs off that project, if you pull the county file, were something like 20. Background traffic at the time was 800, so this was 3 times West Glenwood traffic. So yeah, it's a big deal.
All right, thank you very much.
After whoever does.
Is it, sorry, I didn't see a hand. Do you have a question? Can I ask one question real quick? Well, I forgot it. Here you go. No, I forgot it. You knocked it out of me, Charlie.
Okay. Trying to have several questions for you, and then I have several questions for the applicant. So some of these might dovetail together. So if you listen, you might have different answers, and I certainly like to hear what you have to say. Tracy Trilov mentioned something about traffic mitigation studies. I wrote it down, and I'm not sure I had the right term. Is that what you used? What is a traffic mitigation study?
Well, it's something that we've already began discussing at the staff level, but I mean, ultimately, an issue that we have found with Terry and with our fire chief is that, one of the major issues that we have is the circulation and management of traffic when we have these emergency evacuation situations. And it's more, it takes more involvement from multiple jurisdictions, from, the city to the county to surrounding counties to CDOT to the State Highway Patrol to understand, even federal highways to understand how we can address that issue. And it is something that we've been working on. We've been in conversations for access line breaks so that we could get the traffic out of the city faster and utilize multiple locations to exit traffic onto the highway in any given direction. But again, it's something that it will take time for us to produce. And I am very sympathetic to the concerns that we've heard from the community about that. But, I do want to reiterate that, we would not see development here for quite some time, and it would give us the opportunity to use some of the funds for the applicant to both plan and implement some of those mitigation factors.
And Shelley reminded me and showed me his traffic incident management plan. That's what I meant. Is that what you're addressing?
Correct.
And so that, as I heard you say it, then that dovetails into this evacuation plan that the applicant's going to put $100,000 toward that plan.
Correct.
We have any idea what the total cost of that plan is going to be?
I don't know the exact cost of that, but we assume that there will be a planning cost as well as some implementation costs with that. And it's not just access line breaks. It's, trying to provide for the management of traffic on the ground here in the city. It could be flagger training for city employees, but there are a lot of factors involved in that, but I don't know the exact cost, sorry.
Because my imagination, when I look at construction costs, tells you if we're going to put emergency access lanes onto I-70 from 6 and 24.
Well, I don't think it would anticipate access lanes or new exits. It would be at grade where we can in locations in the city.
So what you would be looking at, Charlie, is more what you see. I'm trying to think. I think you see some of them like around in the Vail area where you essentially have an emergency. Cut across, it's typically gravel to get you from one side to the other. So it wouldn't look like it's a new exit onto I-70. It would be something that could open a gate. It would be essentially an at grade, probably gravel, maybe paved, break in the this is when they call it an access line break, is that it literally breaks the access line and cuts across onto it. And something I wanted to point out is in the draft annexation agreement, because we feel this is such an important issue, that on page 5 of that, there are a couple of things that are conditions preceding to issuance of COs. One of it is that the emergency access described in H above, which is the design and construction, that it has been constructed
And is operational before any CO is issued for this project. 2, that a new water tank serving North and West Glenwood has been constructed and is operational. We're in the planning phases of that regardless right now. And 3, that a new West Glenwood fire station is substantially complete. And that would be prior to the issuance of a CO on the first building in this project. So before
Townhomes or anything.
Yeah, townhomes or anything, before anybody could move in, those 3 things would have to be ready to go.
Thank you. That adds some of the, Terry stood up too. So one of my questions is, what would be the cost to actually do the plan and or construct it? Maybe Terry could address that better.
Charlie, we've been working internally, both with the police department, as well as the fire department, and public works as well, to develop internal controls and external controls. As you know, we have had a good working relationship with CDOT developing the Glenwood Canyon closure, and we're continuing that, looking at evacuations on the north side and closures of the South Canyon. We are at a point now where we have a plan for access line breaks that Trent described at Storm King, also at First Street, and potentially at the location of Centennial, where that right-of-way crosses, adjacent just to the west of the existing CDOT facility. So we're working to plan a meeting right now with CDOT to get approval for these locations, as well as Jessica's developed plans, and they're very much as Trent described. They're at-grade connections to the highway that would be gated and then opened in the event of an evacuation. And in terms of cost, they're really relatively minor, considering all the other roadway improvements we do.
Minor I always find to be very high.
I'm going to throw a number out there, but it's an asphalt, it's a graded asphalt connection. Let's say, they're $50,000 to $100,000, with gates and that kind of thing that we could control at each location. We're also, as discussed, looking at how internal staff would be trained and have controls at internal locations. And I think our plan is coming along well. I don't know how much help outside we would need. We really need the cooperation of CDOT, and we have already met with CDOT and FHWA to discuss these issues, and I feel like we're on a good track to have a plan developed.
Okay, thanks.
Can I add on to that, Terry? Would that be a traffic incident management plan, as Tracy mentioned, and is that something that we should be seeking state funding for, or is that not needed? It would be, at least, a good base for a traffic incident management plan. It would cover, disasters and evacuations, on multiple fronts. We're thinking of, canyon closures to the west, canyon closures to the east, and, multiple scenarios. So I think, I don't know. I know that, we have a new, fire chief, deputy fire chief, that will eventually kind of get into the loop on all of this planning, and he may have more things to add. I know that Garfield County is working on another evaluation of fire hazards in the county. And I think that between our evacuation analysis and the new information about fire hazards, there probably is some merging of those plans.
And that's something that is going on, and we need to do regardless of this development.
Absolutely.
Trent, back to you. So one of the questions maybe to Carl as well is kind of the question, Bob, what I said earlier. If we approved the zoning today and waited 60 days to do the PUD, and from the applicant's standpoint, I don't think it'd be ready to give us an overall development plan for including the mall and this 12-acre parcel. Is that?
So just for clarification, you mean approve the annexation, but not the PUD, because PUD isn't backed up.
All right, thank you, yes, thank you. That's what I meant, didn't say it well. Thank you very much.
Yes, but I don't know that 60 days is gonna make much difference in terms of, getting an application submitted. I mean, just for timeline of submittal of an application, reviewing it, we're at about approximately 2 months now. So, I mean, the earliest they would even be in front of you based on that schedule would be November. I'm not sure that the applicant's prepared to advise or plan all of these issues in that time frame. But I think what the PUD itself is going to set out the dimensional and use and intensities that you would expect to see moving forward.
But my concern when I'm looking at this is I'm looking at one parcel, and if the applicant goes forward and purchases the mall property, which I understand isn't all of it, it's not going to include some of the stuff at the west end, but if they purchase all of it, is looking at an overall plan for the property. That may move residential uses around. And
I think that is the intent, is that hopefully in the future, upon annexation of this property, they would be intending to move forward with a development plan for both this parcel as well as the mall parcel.
They're not going to be required to move forward, even to purchase the mall parcels.
So the reason we have the phasing and the annexation agreement the way we do is that it essentially will make, it would create the scenario where they can't move forward with phase 2, which are the larger buildings to the
south, until there is an approved West Glenwood Mall site plan. If they don't get that, they're gonna have to come back in front of you to modify the PUD and the schedule, so you get another bite at this, if you want to, right? So the two are linked together.
Can we, I apologize, I read through this quickly and
Yeah, no, I know you've been in meetings.
But can we, as part of the annexation plan, can we basically, so you got to amend your PUD. We don't like it anymore. We want this bigger PUD for the entire.
Well, so you're gonna, I mean, and maybe Jen can talk, she's better at process than I am, but essentially what you're saying is, again, PUD is just zoning, not site plan. So you will see a site plan that incorporates the dimensional standards of the PUD. That site plan likely is going to be a master plan for underneath the code. There's a master site plan process that will include both this parcel as well as the West Glenwood Mall. That's why I keep saying that the PUD doesn't change the necessity for reviewing, for the developer to bring you a site plan for your approval. It just is setting dimensional standards and uses on the parcel.
That's my concern, I guess, is because we're going to give them, I don't forget the number of units, and Haley reminded me and I forgot, but we're going to have X number of units, certain density, certain heights and things that are going to be allowed if we approve the PUD. And if we come back later, we have this overall site plan and we want to change that. Can we require them to change that PUD?
Without question, you can modify that zoning with that at that time if you need to.
We do that in the annexation agreement now.
Well, I mean, the reality is if that site plan doesn't sync up with the PUD zoning that if you were to approve it, they're going to have to modify the PUD zoning to match up to the site plan. So I guess I'm struggling with what I mean. I don't know how to more clearly separate that the PUD doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what it's going to look like.
Let me do a quick better read now, maybe.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's just very important to remember that this is not a site-specific development.
I do understand that. I do understand the difference in those.
So just like any current zoning in the city today, it doesn't necessarily allow you, I mean, it has uses by right, but it doesn't really address the intensity of any given development. That would come with a site and architectural plan review at a later date.
I understand. Let me ask you, just how big is Sayre Park? How many acres, do we know?
How big is Sayre Park? I don't know off the top of my head.
Come on, Trent.
Come on, gee, man.
Sorry.
How long you been with the city?
Anyone here know?
Question is So, no, I'm not trying to put you in a spot, I'm just trying to get some sense of size. When I think about a 6-acre park, you said somebody said would be required if you didn't have parkland dedication. Well, we don't have any parkland out in West Glenwood. And so, you know, what does $1 million buy us in land area that we could put a park in West Glenwood if we weren't gonna do it here? I guess that's where I was trying to get to.
7.6 acres.
7.6.
Sayre Park.
Sayre Park.
Sayre Park.
Thank you. Oh.
They put that asphalt park.
Ask you another question, I lost that one. So, thank you, okay.
Part is the
All right, okay, so that helps me understand what we're talking about. So the next question will come back to developer, and then I'll leave that. Carl mentioned this, you don't do a kind of cost-benefit analysis on an annexation because, particularly residential one, because typically residential doesn't pay its own way. I mean, I've learned that way back a long time ago. Do we have any estimate of what the additional cost of the city for fire, police, other types of general services, what it's going to cost us to service this new area?
I don't know an exact dollar amount in terms of what it would cost to service this area. You know, I can say from, you know, planning, you know, theory, and design that, you know, typically more mixed-use development are better in terms of the use for, you know, fire or some other services such as water and sewer and those type of things. I think you could expect more service in terms of the EMS side of fire and for police services, for sure.
So Chief, maybe a question to you. If you had 34 people that we have approved in your department, if you were fully staffed, could you handle this additional development without additional staff?
There's an industry standard that roughly says it's about, they figure about 3 residents per unit. So you know, if we have 300 units, that's an additional 900 people. So we do have some formulas, which I don't have with me today. I can tell you that not only the police officers that we have to consider, the amount of work generated by those officers or from calls for service then affect our record staff, our police record staff, which also affects the dispatchers. And then there's associated costs with another police vehicle and equipment, those things. So it can add up pretty quickly. But if you're asking me to get those figures for you, then I can certainly provide that for you. I just don't have them here right now.
Okay, thanks. And then so, guys, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm almost done.
How many
Sorry,
questions
I
do you
saw your
have,
phone.
Charlie? It's 20 after 9, and I'm gonna ask the mayor to move to continue at some point, because I'm tired, and I don't think we can be effectual anymore.
I didn't try to throw my questions, and I appreciate it, Tony.
I know, but,
yeah.
you know, you had a lot of questions. I had one question, and your questions can be answered at other times, too. I mean, like, what size is the sale car?
I tried to see what question I have that I haven't got answered, so I apologize.
I'll ask a question while you,
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost done. To the applicant, you know, somebody mentioned senior housing and things like that. We don't have senior patio housing in this community. That's not feasible from a cost standpoint, I assume, putting in a development like this. Is that right?
I actually don't know the answer. We've not typically developed senior housing. Typically, it becomes its own product type. And it's just not something that we have typically done. So it's hard for me to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. Is there some way that, rather than, that's the question we got into a minute ago about 20% open space versus 20% public space. Is there some way to incorporate into the final site plan, in your view, that we would then obviously put in the annexation agreement, where you would dedicate a section of this property for a public park area? I mean, giving up maybe some other amenities that you may have within the development as it currently is shown to us.
I mean, obviously you can always do that. I think you would be doing that at the expense of lowering the overall number of unit counts. And then the question we would have to look at in studying that is what becomes the feasibility. You know, one of the things about the project is that there's been a lot that's been asked of the project because it's being annexed, which we completely understand. And so at a certain point, and we would be more than happy to look at and analyze that. I can't sit here and say you can or you can't, But there does become kind of at least a breaking point from our perspective. Despite what I heard, I wish we made the kind of money someone was talking about. But there is a balance between that.
Oh, and I understand, this is what you do for a living, you're developing and gonna rent and operate this property, and I want you to make a profit. It wouldn't make any sense for you not to do that. The question is there a way to carve out, either maybe eliminate, and so I'm gonna throw out stuff something isn't feasible. Can you eliminate the community center? Can you eliminate the pool and put a park space in that area instead? Would that be something that is, or does that just mess with your overall project too much?
I don't think it's fair to say I don't want to make a hard and fast rule. I don't think it's a fair comment to say, you can absolutely not do X, Y, and Z.
I'm not.
But it would come at some expense, whether it's eliminating the clubhouse and the other areas. It may come at the cost of eliminating some of the units. It would come at some type of a cost, so there would be a balancing act we'd have to evaluate.
And that's fair. I'm trying to think of other ways to solve some of what I've seen the received needs. Right. More park space, because it's very hard for the younger persons in that area, be it in the city or in the county, to go to a public park. There really isn't much there available to them. So
it's a fair comment.
It's a concern I have. Somebody mentioned story polls. Is there a reason you haven't done the story polls?
Well, what we actually did do is it's not on here, it was on the original presentation, but we went to a great length and expense to actually do a visual from those front porches, because it was asked by P&Z. We actually did a Google map, and Yancey can explain the process, but it's probably about as accurate as you could imagine of what you would actually be seeing across the street if you were looking outside of your window.
I did see those.
And so what we did is we did that, which we think is probably the most accurate depiction of what that visual would be looking from someone's house.
Okay, I think it's all I have right now.
Tony, do you have a question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Carl, this is for you, and then it's also for R2 is, we've talked a lot about we could do the annexation and then possibly do the zoning later. And I understand all that you have explained to us, everybody's explained to us as far as making this a PUD, but nobody's really told us the benefit of using mixed use M1 or residential transitional zoning in that area as opposed to that. And I saw one of the letters that were sent to us mention that. And so number one is, what are the benefits? So I just want to know.
Right.
And then number two is that something that R2 would consider a different zoning and still be part of this annexation?
Yeah, so I guess I guess my answer would be is that the reason we typically use PUDs is to provide a level of flexibility, create something unique for a particular site, and that ties it to something that's a little bit more site-specific in terms of being contextual. Those other zone districts in Jen or Trent, somebody who knows the code better off the top of their head will have to describe what the potential range of uses would be in those zone districts you just described and the potential heights, because you don't have the ability, that's just straight up zoning. So Trent, do you?
Well, what I'm looking for, Trent, just is there benefits that we should be considering? That's just all I need to know as we're looking at zoning.
Well, I think Carl hit on one very important piece, and that is the ability to be able to restrict specific uses here. M1 would open up quite a bit of allowable uses in this zone that I think that would have greater impact on the adjacent single-family neighborhoods. One of the benefits also is an increase in height for this development. They are asking for a height on some of these buildings, I would say, on the downhill side that is greater than what is permitted by the M1 zone district. And I think that we have tried to, as Carl mentioned, to use contextual setbacks, contextual building heights along that significant grade that occurs from Donegan Road to the south to the mall property.
So an M1 benefit would be they would have height restrictions that they would not have with this PUD.
if I reword what you just said, is that correct?
Yeah, so a PUD, I would say uses and the ability to kind of have a unique development within the property in terms of height and the grades at the site.
And is there any benefits that we should be considering as far as a residential transitional zone? I'm looking for what benefits are, just so I'm weighing those against what a PUD gives them.
Yeah, well, I would say that I think the residential transitional zone, I don't know the exact uses, but I don't know that it would allow for the small neighborhood restaurant that's proposed with this development. I don't know that it calls out more of like a live-work type unit that's being provided with this development.
So it's more.
But in terms of and the, there would be some floor area, I'm sorry, not floor area, but area ratios that would be applicable to a zone district, whereas in this development across the 12 acres, we have something, like along Donegan that is more townhomes and representative of adjacent blocks to this project. But then we have greater density and larger buildings as we get closer to a commercial development, which is the mall, and which we anticipate to be a future redevelopment of commercial mixed uses.
I guess the other follow-up I'd have for you is that, literally the thing about a PUD is that if you don't like what you're seeing, and there's something in one of those other zone districts you want to impose, modify it and impose it. That's what you can do with a PUD, as opposed to just a straight-up zone district. So I guess I'm not sure what. I guess I need to kind of come back to you and say, what are you trying to achieve?
I'm trying to address a concern that somebody had in one of their letters, which just goes to show I read a lot of letters.
No, absolutely, and that's where I'm trying to get to.
Okay. What?
Concern, like, it's kind of a broad question on like what's the advantage of the zone district. I would say I don't know because I don't know what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
What you can do with the PUD, and that's the great thing about the flexibility, is if there's something in that you were trying to achieve, modify the PUD on approval so that that's either the limit or the whatever it is. If it's a height that you don't like, if it is density you don't, whatever that is, the PUD
gives you the flexibility to make that choice. The PUD is by its very nature a blank slate for you to write on.
Okay, so really what you're saying is I can get exactly what I wanted in a mixed-use M1 or a residential transitional zone in this PUD.
Right, exactly. If you want to pull some of the stuff out of there that you really like and put it into that PUD because it's not there, absolutely we can do that.
Okay, great. That, I think, answers that question.
Sorry, and I should have.
That's okay. I was just kind of trying to address something that I had seen a concern on.
And then a clarifying question as well. If you had designated a PUD, it runs in perpetuity with the property, correct?
Yeah, it's zoning, so it's not like, which is, by way of example, the PUD that applies to the West Glenwood Mall currently was approved in probably 1981 by the county, right? That was never a city approved because then it was annexed as it is kind of thing. So yeah, it runs in perpetuity, it gets changed, there's a process in the code if you want to change the PUD. I know you've been through a couple of those when you were on the planning commission. So it's the same thing, yeah.
It actually does, the PUD allows for a little more restrictiveness in maintaining the property too. Like you can kind of make sure that you've got some good checks and balance in there to make sure that.
And one of the biggest ones, and Trent really hit on it, one of the biggest advantages is the limitation of uses, right? If you just straight up zone something, there's going to be a bunch of uses in there that maybe aren't really compatible with the site. And the PUD gives you guys the flexibility to say, we don't like that use or that use or that use.
Thank you. That helps.
Any other questions? All right, I have a few. Yeah, I've seen a lot of the documents, and maybe I missed it, but is there any site plan that actually shows the dedication of the fire station? Did I miss it?
Well, again, because we're not actually approving a site plan, you didn't miss it.
Okay.
So
you might have to go through the whole PUD thing again with me.
I'm sorry. No, but here's what I want to say about the site, is that what we've drafted, knowing that we don't have an approved site plan, what I really want to fight, or actually not only me, but Ingrid and several others at their strategic planning session mentioned the importance of a new spot for West Glenwood and a new West Glenwood fire station to serve that side of town. Is that there needs to be an acre site dedicated either on this property, and this is a great example of where one of those things that happens, Charlie, that, these triggers, right? That if they don't close on the West Glenwood Mall and we don't see a site plan, somewhere on this property, they need to give us an acre for a site, for a fire station, right? So that's the way it's drafted, is that we get that 1 acre either on this site or on the West Glenwood Mall site, but we get that acre for the fire station. That's a condition, as I've drafted it, if you guys would ultimately approve it. So you would get that. Where exactly it is has not been finally determined, and I think that's going to be a lot of negotiation with the fire chief on what works best for them to exit, with the trucks they need to exit with it, right? What serves that area best and what serves the greater community best.
Charlie had asked a question about eliminating the clubhouse and the pool, and if we could turn that into more community space. And the applicant, I'm sorry. Barry, sorry, sir. The applicant said, well, eliminating that impacts the unit count. How does eliminating a pool and a clubhouse impact the overall unit count?
So it doesn't necessarily. What I was saying is just adding more land, depending on how we would do it, could potentially impact the unit count. I think you're correct. If we were to eliminate that area and make that a public space versus what we have, that is not eliminating the unit count. You're correct.
So what advantage in this plan does a clubhouse and a pool, what amenity does that serve for the community?
Well,
would those amenities be open to the public at large?
They would not. They would not. We would have lots of liability and other issues. I think if we were to open that up, I think I would be, more apt to trying to open up a public outdoor space to the public than I would a private space, an actual building or a pool area.
Let's see. I only have 6 or 7 more questions. I'll ask those later. Any other questions?
Will we have a chance if we continue this tonight, will we have a chance to have discussion and
I think,
comments?
do we want to have discussion tonight yet?
Mr. Mayor, I have reviewed the access code. I didn't get to look at the newest one that came out the other day. I was on vacation, sorry, but I'm gone. And I haven't just had a chance to review it. I want to think about what's here. I might have more questions based on what I review. So I would move that we continue this hearing to the September 2nd City Council meeting.
I would second that, only though, for purpose of conversation, my only concern with that, Charlie, is that I think if we have requests for the developer, for that developer to be able to contemplate that and bring that back, because if we have specific requests of the developer at the next meeting, then we have to give him the next meeting, and then you're not going to be at that meeting. So.
Where's he gonna be?
Vacation again.
I had a question.
Yes.
Do it a year. Could there be more questions at the next meeting? But is your concern if there's more questions at the next meeting, then Barry has to come back with the answers at the next meeting?
No, I think there can be some back and forth, but I think there's a lot of information that we've gotten from the public and a lot of information we've had tonight, but then there's some specific things that we need to give for direction to staff and or the applicant that they need to contemplate and bring back to us and respond back to that.
And I apologize, like Charlie, I haven't had a chance. I've been in hearings for 2 days and someone here said I'm ADB, and I apologize if I'm antsy, but when it gets to be like 9:30, 9:45, my brain shuts off. So I'm not prepared right now to have a discussion about this. I need some time to digest all the public comment we heard tonight, reread this, and then.
Add a little more of this to the agenda next week.
Next week or 2 weeks.
That would be.
Special meeting next week.
They won't let me.
You're trying, Tony.
No, I'm not gonna throw it, because you'll kill me.
I mean, my thing is.
No, I absolutely understand what you're asking, is if, you guys have raised, a variety of questions. Most pointedly, I think, is the one regarding open space. I think I heard that clearly, and I'm guessing the developer heard that clearly. And so I do see where, if there's anything off the top of your head, I know Finger has a couple of things. If any of you guys do have that you could throw in, would be great. I recognize this is a big application, it's a big thing for the city. It will take as much time as it takes to get it where you guys want it, and I'm not overly concerned about that, from my standpoint, because you guys need to get it right. So,
if you got some direction tonight, great. If you don't, I worry we have a lot going on that special meeting that we called for Tuesday. And so I don't know that that's an efficient use. Charlie, you're gone the second meeting in September?
Yeah, and again, this is the last. We also 5 Thursdays in September, so it would be possible to have in my view, we could have a special meeting later in September, maybe that 4th Thursday.
I guess what I'd ask them.
Tonight.
Charlie, before you suggest something, I will not.
It doesn't like that.
I'm actually going to suggest something different, talking about the 5 Thursdays. And are we back?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of my thoughts is that you give us a little bit more flexibility, and would you guys be willing to commit to the Thursday, the September 10th?
That's that Thursday after Labor Day.
It's the Thursday after Labor Day, so we have a meeting on, or not 10th, it'd be.
10th, we have a meeting.
No, we have a meeting on the second, anyway, a week after the 9th.
The 9th.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
I believe you, but let me check.
Well, can I just throw out 5 things I'd have for the developer I'd like them to contemplate?
Well, everybody's looking at their calendar because
Yeah.
we're going to be a special meeting.
All right, 60% resident occupied. That means people who work in Glenwood Springs would occupy this.
I think they should be meeting, I actually think they might like hearing these things.
They're allowed to be.
Yeah,
This is America.
I would-
You don't have to pay for it, don't be meeting if you want.
I would like all the townhomes in the plan. We'd have 40 townhomes. I know that affects some of the density, but they would be all affordable, contingent upon a successful passage of an additional attraction/lodging tax, so they could help you out with that. It's a new source of revenue. I'd like to see all the amenities open to the public. I understand there's some liability issues with that. I know Iron Bridge does that, though. They do open that up to guests of the residents. In lieu of that, taking that space and using it for more active recreation, a la soccer fields, basketball courts that are, again, open to the public at large, moving those towards the edge of the development so it's more of an amenity for the entire community. As 2% real estate transfer tax for the second transfer. That's what I meant. I did not say the other word. I said assessment. And Shelley has something about affordable housing.
I can follow up with you. It's a Colorado quirky thing.
Gotcha. I don't think that the 9th may not work for Mr. Willman and for me.
I've got both.
Keep going.
And I have a Jewish child.
Okay, let's see. So
I just had a couple comments. I would agree with the comments on the public park space. I think that is a critical need out in West Glenwood. We've heard about that. So I would prefer to see a public park. I don't know what size would work in lieu of a pool and maybe a private clubhouse, maybe shelters and barbecue grills or whatever could be incorporated into that, but that's up to you guys. But seeing something like that that's open to the public in West Glenwood would be, I would be in favor of that. Also, in reviewing the traffic study, I'm concerned about the amount of traffic being put on to Melray Road, so I'm interested in that exit and possibly entrance through the mall, you know, in that southeast corner of the property. So if that could possibly become more of an entrance and exit, which would relieve some of the traffic off of Storm King and Melray, I'd love to see that, because it looks like there's a 31% increase of traffic on Melray, as what I saw in the traffic study. Let's see, and I think on the affordable housing piece that's in the annexation agreement right now, I'm not so sure I agree with you on the 100% of the townhome units. I don't know that that would be possible, but depending on if there's.
Contingent upon a source of revenue.
Contingent of, but I did see the 20% residential units deed restricted, and then it says, or 10% for 90% of AMI. I guess I wouldn't want to drop that to 10%. I'd rather see that.
So it was either 20% at
100.
At 100.
Or
10% at 90. I think that 10% is too much of a drop. I'd, you know, if we're going to go to 90, maybe we drop to 18% or 15%, but I'd rather see us stay closer to the 20% number. And that's all I have.
And I'd say if we're at 100% AMI, it's more 25%.
I'm just gonna, the only thing I would add is, I'm concerned about the Melray Road issue, because unless we just, like Shelley's talking about, my concern is that we're talking about putting a lot of traffic on that road, and if it's not even a dedicated road, that causes to be significant concern, so.
Yeah, and it's a dedicated road, it's just on an easement, and so from an annexation standpoint, we can't, the county asked us to take it over, we were willing to do that, obviously if it was improved. I just can't legally do that because of the.
I understand, but that could become a factor, so I need to know more about that. Didn't want to take time tonight to go through that.
Okay. But,
I just had a calendar
Question.
Yeah, that was my question too, as we're.
I know, but September 16th is Yom Kippur, and as long as we get done, if we started after, it's just not a good day. I would like to avoid that day for a meeting, but I also would like to avoid talking about this.
right, so I was, is council available?
September 6th or 7th.
Yes.
Yes, except the 6th is Labor Day.
Oh, right, sorry. That's when we're all available. I have to apologize, we don't really do holidays at my firm.
Well, I work for the government, so that's all we do.
You're talking about that.
Tony, the 7th is Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, I know.
So.
I guess I could, oh, it is Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
First night.
The 7th in the evening, since nobody wants to sing.
You coming over?
Today.
We'll have like a.
There we go.
I'll do it, how about on Sunday on the 5th?
Yeah, I'd be good with that too. So the 7th?
Well, what time on the 7th?
Evening meeting, 6
o'clock. If there's some other time, just throw something out for me.
I prefer the 8th, but that's okay.
Yeah, I can't do the 8th.
So this meeting would be continued to the 7th?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, let's just continue it to a special meeting.
I can make it work.
Yeah.
So your motion is to continue to the 7th at 6 p.m.
That's what I said, I think.
Okay, no, thank you.
I'll second that.
It's been motioned by Charlie, seconded by myself. All in favor, continuing the meeting to the September 7th special meeting hearing. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
It's fine. Hey, guys, thank you very, very much. I know it's one more meeting. You guys are really dedicated, patient. I appreciate the,
It's fun though, isn't it?
the professionalism, the ability to hang in there. It's great. Thank you.
Are we adjourned? Can I leave?
I just closed the hearing.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was like, I'm done.